Good evening. It's 6 o'clock in Colerain Township, March 8th, 2022. We will open the meeting. Mr. Mills, is there a need for an executive session? And if so, under what ORC guidelines? Then we do the pledge. I don't know.
No, we usually do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
We don't need to do a roll call.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, we need to do a vote.
Roll call.
Sorry. My mind is blank today. Yeah, roll call vote. I'm sorry, Mr. Baker.
Ms. Orich?
Here.
Mr. Unger?
Here.
Mr. Waller?
Here. Now, Mr. Mills.
Okay. Yes, sir. I recommend that the board go into executive session to discuss the employment and compensation of public employees in accordance with the Ohio Revised Code, Section 121.22G1. Also, in accordance with the Ohio Revised Code, Section 121.22G2, to consider the purchase of property for public purposes. Also, in accordance with the Ohio Revised Code, Section 121.22G3, to discuss pending or imminent litigation with the township's attorney. And also in accordance with the Ohio Revised Code, Section 121.22G4, to discuss collective bargaining sessions with public employees concerning their compensation.
All right, any motions at this time?
I motion we go into executive sessions for the reasons articulated by Mr. Mills.
Any seconds?
Second.
Discussion?
Mr. President, I would
Yes.
recommend that we invite members from Immersion Design to our executive session.
All right. So, Mr. Unger, you want to withdraw and motion again to go into executive session with the invitation to Immersion Design?
I motion that I withdraw my motion.
I don't think it's necessary.
Okay, all right. Just-
And just to be clear, you're having people in from
Immersion Design.
Immersion Design Company along with the trustees, our attorney, and yourself,
Yep, and Mr. Weckbach.
Mr. Weckbach, and, okay.
All right.
Ms. Orich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes. We are headed to executive session at 6:03. Thank you. Large crowd tonight. Thank you, everybody, for coming out. We're a little bit tardy. It is 7:02 my time here, March 8th, 2022, for the regular meeting of the Board of Trustees. Is there anything let's take an attendance from executive session, please.
Ms. Orich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Here?
Mr. Waller?
Here, Mr. Mills, is there anything to report from executive session?
No, sir.
All right, if we could please stand for the pledge, followed by the meditation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And if we remain standing for a minute of meditation, and if this evening, I'm sure everybody has been overwhelmed with news of what's going on in Ukraine and Poland and the surrounding areas. I was lucky enough about 10 years ago to spend a summer in Russia and Ukraine, and what's going on there is just nothing short of just tragic. So let's keep them in our thoughts and prayers for this evening and for forever. All right, this evening we were going to start with, we've been provided in a board packet with minutes. Are there any motions at this time
I have none.
with regard to these minutes?
Board, I have two sets of minutes for you. First would be for the regular meeting of the Board of Trustees on February 8th, 2022.
I motion that we approve the minutes of the February 8th, 2022 meeting.
And I'll second that. Are there any questions, concerns, comment?
I sent you just a couple typos, Jeff. I think there was 3 of them. And you took care of that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, seeing no other, call the question, please.
Ms. Ulrich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes.
Thank you, Board. I also have a very short minutes from the special meeting of the Board of Trustees on February 22nd, 2022.
I motion that we approve the minutes of the February 22nd, 2022 meeting.
I second.
All right, having a duly recognized motion and second, any questions, comments, or concern with regard to the minutes from that meeting?
None from me.
None for me.
All right,
Ms. Ulrich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
yes.
That's all I have, Board.
All right, next we have in item 6 a number of proclamations. I don't know, Mr. Mills, if you'd like to introduce the proclamation, and I will start with the first.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Waller. Board of Trustees, good evening. The first proclamation that we have for your consideration is a proclamation that recognizes Mr. Ed C. Smith. Ed is such a good guy. I just want to share with you guys, Ed has been a police clerk for many, many, many years. He is just a light, a shining light of positivity that comes out of that wing of the building. I think the world of this man, and I'm sure that Chief Denny can introduce this better, but I just wanted to say how much I appreciated working with you, Ed.
All right, would you like me to redirect or?
If you wouldn't mind, if I could go first, I'd
Yeah,
appreciate it.
go ahead.
Thank you. Jeff stole most of my thunder there, unfortunately. In 2001, the Colerain Police Department began our very first Citizens Police Academy. And the intent of that was to educate our community and to forge new relationships throughout the community as well. But little did we know, the very first applicant and the first graduate of that academy would become part of our family. Ed Smith was to many in our community the face of the Colerain Police Department. If you were lucky enough to know him, he was much more. Ed knew the names of our kids and our spouses, and a lot of us were forced to come up here on our work days, or off days, because our kids begged to see Mr. Ed, to give him the newest picture they drew for him, or just to stand around him.
Oh, how rude.
And to everyone who came to this police department in the last 20 years, he was a fixture. You knew the workday was almost done when Ed came in the late afternoon. You knew that because you could hear his keys jingling as he walked down the hallway to say hello to every single person in the building every single day. Those of us who knew Ed knew he had a passion for watches. Every day there was a new watch on his wrist, and Ed would talk about it for as long as you'd stand there and let him. Ed would order the watches, and the mailman would continually deliver them to his house. And unfortunately, Colleen put a stop to that. Well, she thought she did. Ed changed up his routine and started meeting the mailman at the top of the street. And Ed, I hope you've told Colleen about that, otherwise you're in trouble. His family here at the police department thought that there was no better fitting tribute to him than a watch from his friends. And we hope this is okay with Colleen, and we swear that this isn't a new trick that Ed devised to get new watches to come in. Ed, step forward for us. Ed, thank you for your friendship and your years of dedicated service to Colerain. We love you, and we miss you already. I think there's a few other things here that we want to present to you as well.
Oh, how precious.
With that, I'll turn it over to the board who would like to read a proclamation.
Thank you. Proclamation recognizing Colerain Police Department Records Clerk Edward Smith. Be it proclaimed by the Township Trustees of Colerain Township that whereas Edward C. Smith has provided dedicated and outstanding service to the employees of the Colerain Police Department and to the citizens of Colerain Township for more than 21 years, and whereas Edward C. Smith served as a tireless volunteer for the Colerain Police Department prior to his employment, and whereas Edward C. Smith was the very first applicant and graduate of the first Colerain Police Department Citizens Police Academy and has served as an ambassador for this program, and whereas Edward C. Smith was the face and heart of the Colerain Police Department for over 2 decades and provided outstanding service through his compassion, skill, and experience, and whereas Edward C. Smith retired on December 31st, 2021, after 50 years in the workforce and 21 years serving Colerain Township, we wish Mr. Edward Smith all the best and thank him for his tireless dedication to the men and women of the Colerain Police Department and the citizens and visitors of Colerain Township. Be it proclaimed that the Colerain Township Board of Trustees does hereby recognize Edward C. Smith for his years of outstanding dedication and service to the residents of Colerain Township, and this would read, upon our vote adopted the 8th day of March 2022. Are there any motions at this time?
I motion that we would adopt the proclamation as read by Mr. Wallert.
And I proudly second that.
And, well, we have to vote yet. I don't know, you never know with these guys. Mr. Baker?
Ms. Orich?
I had a
Yes.
question.
Oh, I'm sorry, we had a
What about
question.
discussion?
I'm sorry, we have discussion.
Ed, so what have you been doing the last couple months?
Working.
No more questions.
Different honey-do list, yeah.
Congratulations. I appreciate the 5 years that I've gotten to know you, and you're a lot of fun. So,
Thank you so much for your service. Now, we will go to a vote.
Ms. Orich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
yes.
Mr. Waller?
Absolutely.
Thank all of you for coming. It's been a lot of fun being here. I never thought work could be so much fun, but I had fun every day, every day. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, we move on to item B, a proclamation by the Board of Trustees for Kathy's Happy Organs and Pianos.
And Matt, I'm going to ask, I spoke to Kathy earlier today, and she has a store at Northgate Mall, and very recently they changed the hours till 8 o'clock. So she would like to stop here, and she said she'd be here around 8:15, so I wonder if we could move that to later in the agenda. I would say after the demolition of property resolution, that should be around 8:15,
Okay, so then we have a motion to move item 6B
till she shows up.
to table until further notice then.
Well, till later in this meeting.
Right, later, you can table it till later. Is that a second?
I'll second.
Okay, vote?
Ms. Orich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes. All right, Chief.
Yes, sir.
We're back to you. Presentation by Chief Denny, introducing and swearing in newly hired Andrew Morris.
Andrew, will you step forward? Tonight I'll swear in our newest police officer, Andrew Morris. Andrew is a 2017 graduate of Sycamore High School and a 2019 graduate of the Butler Tech Police Academy. Prior to Colerain Township, Andrew served with the North College Hill Police Department. So we're glad to have him. Who did you bring with you today to witness?
My mother, my brother, my girlfriend, and our brand new baby girl.
Oh, beautiful.
All right. And your badges.
Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name. I, Andrew Moore. Do solemnly swear. Do solemnly swear. That I will uphold the Constitution of the United States of America. That I will uphold the Constitution of the United States of America. The Constitution of the State of Ohio and its bylaws. The Constitution of the State of Ohio and its bylaws. I will abide by the Colerain Police Department mission and value statement. I will abide by the Colerain Police Department mission and value statement. Code of ethics. Code of ethics. Rules and regulations. Rules and regulations. Police Department policy and procedure. Police Department policy and procedure. I will faithfully discharge the duties of police officer. I will faithfully discharge the duties of police officer. In and for Colerain Township. In and for Colerain Township. Campbell County. Campbell County. State of Ohio. State of Ohio. To the best of my ability. To the best of my ability. Congratulations.
Congratulations, welcome aboard.
And be safe out there.
Congratulations.
Congratulations and welcome.
Welcome.
All right. We'll give folks, I know there's folks probably need to get back to work, so.
Yeah. Oh, look at him caring for the baby.
God, she's like brand.
Oh, you've done this before, Mr. Cordy. Is it a girl? Oh, yes, it is. Oh, let's see her. Oh. Oh my God, she's beautiful.
Whose baby is that? Was that a drop-off at the Township?
What's that?
Is that a drop-off at the baby drop-off at the Township?
Kids come in and you go like this and shove them out of the way just to get to the baby. You now know, like, oh, yes, babies, grandbabies. Not that we don't love our children anymore, but you know. I can't get the agenda up.
Jeff, can you see if there's any citizen address out there? Did you get any citizen's address?
No, I did not. All right, while we're waiting for the crowd to clear out, I'll just announce what's coming up next. Is we prepare item D, presentation by Energy Alliance, Natural Gas Aggregation.
Oh, that really cleared the room.
Yes, sir. I'd like to introduce Mr. Rich Serace with Energy Alliance. Serace? Serace. Excuse me, I had it right the first time. With Energy Alliances, who's going to give a presentation on our natural gas aggregation program. We have a renewal option coming up here in June, and now's a good time to learn about the program.
Thank you,
Seems
Mr.
like
Mills.
I've heard the words gas today a lot. It's in the news, yeah. Thank you, sir, for coming in.
Downstairs, too.
I'm a little sad that everybody didn't stay to hear such exciting stuff about that. I get it. Mr. Mills, do they have a copy of the presentation?
It'll be up on that screen
My screen is not showing.
Just in case.
sometime.
Thank you, I'd rather have it see there, thank you.
Here it comes.
It's in color.
There it is.
Oh, it's gonna be on
Thank you.
Okay. So as Mr. Mills said, the current natural gas aggregation program does expire this June. So I'm here today to talk a little bit about kind of how the program up to this point has gone, where the market is now, and then kind of where we see things going moving forward. So we'll start kind of, again where things are right now. So with the current aggregation program expires in June, the current price is 0.396 cents per CCF. That price doesn't include any of the county taxes as well as a shopping credit. Constellation is the current supplier, and for the start of the program, I mean, we'll be honest, it didn't perform that well. There was a lot of things like COVID that we could not have predicted ahead of time, and we'll show some curves on kind of how things have performed. So it was a slow start, but definitely over the last 9 months, particularly the last 4 to 6 months, the program has performed very well. So just November through February alone, the average resident in Colerain has saved about $100 in just the last 4 months alone. So the program did pretty much what it was designed to do, was a fixed price compared to Duke's variable rate, and being able to offer some stability when the market went crazy like it did the last 6 months. So this chart here shows the blue line. So this has the taxes and the credit embedded into that. So it's about 42 cents overall. The orange line shows kind of how Duke's rate has changed over time since the program started. So just about the winter of 2020, so about January, actually Duke's rate got very close to the aggregation rate, even though the aggregation rate was higher. But then I think as some of the concerns around the world started to pop up about potentially what was going to happen with COVID, commodities really started to take off, or take down. So that continued into the summer of 2020. Things did start to recover slowly in the commodity space. So you see that line start to tick up. And then really as we got into the second half of 2021, things went significantly higher. And the main reason for that was just the whole supply demand, right? It's a commodity, so it's how those things balance out. So the call and the consumption did outpace demand and production for 2021. Main reasons for that were, again, the recovery was a lot faster than expected. So a lot of people who stopped producing into 2020, they just couldn't keep up and they couldn't get things turned back on fast enough as we got into 20 and 21. It was pretty cold in Texas last winter, so that actually stifled demand across that area. And then the western U.S. that uses a lot of hydro for generation, they were in a drought last year. They're still in a drought this year. So when they can't use hydro, they have to use other sources of generation to do that. What was the generation? Natural gas. So that's really why prices ticked up a lot last year, and we're seeing those still demands on for natural gas right now. And so then the next slide itself just shows the market. So these are the raw market prices. So again, pretty low for 19 into 20, starting to stick up into 21. And then the orange line is the future prices. So those are what the months kind of looking forward, where those prices are. So you can clearly see at least into the first half of next year, those prices are still staying pretty well inflated, though right now the market does have it coming off a little bit into 23 and beyond. So I spoke about, again, where some of the situation happened, on why these prices went higher. And then the next slide will show when we went out to bid with a few suppliers, where we saw things come back. So though we are suggesting the 24-month, did want to show kind of what the 12-month looked like, 24 and the 36-month. But we think the 24-month is right now probably the best kind of happy medium. Right? Prices are high right now. They're a little bit lower in the future. So we could take a little bit of advantage of blending in some of the low prices in the future into now, yet not committing to a much longer term deal that, let's just say for 36 months, say that second year comes off or the third year comes off at all, then we don't want to sit on this higher price for too long. So the 24-month right now seems to be a nice spot to be in, to be able to offer some security, some price security to the residents for next several months into next year and even beyond, but yet not going in too far that if the market does decide to correct it all, that we're not holding on to that. And I did kind of have this little disclaimer at the bottom. We're asking for an at or below to give the administrator the opportunity for an at or below, because we still have to talk through contracts. There's still obviously negotiations that have to happen as well. It is a commodity, so things change every day. So, if this thing would have got locked in really this past Friday, it would have been roughly 2 cents cheaper, so 54 cents instead of 56 cents. So, we feel pretty good that we're going to be able to get it lower than 56, but obviously have to build in some amount of buffer while contracts are getting negotiated. Actually, another thing so still with this offer, like always, there's no termination fee. Right? People can come and go as they want. So even if this price looks great when we start, people like it. They obviously can take it, so they can opt out later on if they want. So no termination fees. So there's really no risk at all. Right? So even if people opt out on day one and decide later on they want to get in, they can then opt into the program. So again, very, very low risk for the residents to have. So then, another thing comes down to, if you don't mind, Jeff, just one more slide back. How does this compare to what's in the market, right? So, we've seen Duke's rates are up. So if people wanted to shop, how does it compare? So it's showing what the 12, 24, and 36 month offers look like. If I go to the Public Utilities Commission and look at the prices out there. So the 24 month at the 555, I showed 556. Again, being sort of on the high end, it's very comparable to what people could do out in the market. But obviously, with that, still had fixed price, no termination fees, no monthly fees, but then people have to manage that contract too. And we've talked to a lot of residents across a lot of communities who get a great rate, and then they forget what happens at the end. And, I've talked to many people that have paid 80, 90, or even $1 per CCF into this winter because they decided to opt into something and just forgot. And then obviously the aggregation gives you that protection that renewal fees aren't something crazy without you forgetting because of how it's coordinated with the township and the other rules that govern that. So again, why I'm here today is to ask for you to give Mr. Mills the authority to continue to look at this and negotiate on the township's behalf using that 56 cents to not exceed 24 months. And then what we'll try to do here in short order is finalize a contract with the supplier. Obviously, we'll continue to look at locking in prices. Assuming we want to move forward, letters would go out in April because there is a 21-day opt-out period. And then the program would restart again in June with a new price. Just to say, you guys are looking at this, and we're looking at this with the township with around 25 other communities. Greene being one, they approved this last week. Westchester actually approved tonight. So, many of your fellow larger townships are also, also looking at this and feeling that it's, the right move to make. That's all I got. If you have any questions.
Any questions?
Yeah, I would certainly say pursue it, Jeff, and see what you can come up with. I'm looking at when this 39 6/10 cents per cubic foot was approved in June of 2019, and boy, the world has changed so much. But back then, the administration was really interested in natural, reliable fuels, and what has changed since then, it almost tempts me to really look at the 36-month, because I don't see the current federal policies changing during this administration. So I would certainly look at that also, and it is what it is. The focus seems to be to get away from, not on my part certainly, but to get away from natural gas, which is abundant, and get into some other stuff that's much more expensive. So I would encourage you to, take a good look at the 36 months, because that'll get us out of this current administration, hopefully. So.
So if I could follow up here, so we expire in June, is that,
That's correct.
okay, June, is there an actual date in June?
It's not, so everything happens on people's meter read dates. So
Okay.
it would be the bill that they get in June, would be the last time that they see those that are on the program, the 396 on there.
So in this rate, on the offers for renewal at or below, the 12, 24, and 36 months, that's locked in, I guess, if we begin the negotiations now?
Yes.
And is there a benefit, if you feel that maybe the geopolitical environment will become a little bit more positive in a month or so? Obviously, we could get the lower price, but is there a benefit to waiting to do the at or below after maybe the world kind of gets a little bit more sane?
So that's why I'm looking at the 24-month, because even outside of some of the geopolitical, things were coming up before that, right? So I think the days of the low prices that we've kind of liked the last several years, that feels like it's over. So I think that's where the 24-month, again, finds that kind of happy medium, that we're stuck in the higher prices, at least for now. And then, we'll make a change. So if things come off in future years, we can always look at locking in, and blending, extending, or going on future years from there. But no, I don't see a lot of things changing. And typically, the natural gas market will kind of bottom out around this time of the year as the concerns of winter are gone, but then the concerns of summer really start to kick in. Where years ago, again, natural gas was used so much during the winter, you actually find that the price of gas during the summer, natural gas that is, for the summer and winter, they're pretty close because of how much of it is used for generation now of electricity. So again, I don't see. If I knew exactly what was going to happen, I'm probably not staying here. I'm probably trading and living on an island somewhere by myself. But again, all the analysis we do says it doesn't look like things are going to change significantly between now and even the next couple of weeks.
Now, you're saying that every person in the Colerain Township will be mailed out April?
Yep, so we expect that letters would go out in April.
In
Yep,
April.
So those who are eligible would get a letter.
Okay.
And so I guess to clarify who's eligible. So those that are currently on the program would be eligible. Those who are currently on Duke's standard rates, so that would be their GCR, they would be eligible. People who are not on PIP, so the percent of income plan, they would not be eligible, so they would not get letters. And those who are currently shopping with any other supplier outside of the aggregation also would not be eligible.
So the letter comes to them, they mail it back in to opt out.
Correct. So if they like the price and they don't want to do anything, they
Right,
just
I just want to make
this
that clear
is an
for.
opt-out program.
Yes,
Correct.
right.
And again, if somebody decides to not opt out, so be in the program, and then sometime later they decide we don't want to be in it anymore, they can call us,
It's
they
no
can call the
cost to them.
supplier,
Yes.
and that's it. They get out and they can opt out. Just like those who opt out and they decide to get in later, they can choose to go back in later at no cost as well.
Hence, if the market came down, they could
Yeah, well,
opt out themselves personally.
Right. Correct. And everybody has, which is what I like about the program, is everybody can opt
Right.
out.
Yeah, it gives obviously a competitive and fair fixed price, against the market and against Duke's rates, but really no commitment at all.
And that's hard to find. If you look at the PUCO apples to apples, there's a ton of options, right? But one that has as little risk and as easy in and out as this is just a really stable, safe baseline. And if you want to, really pay attention to the market, you can always do better, right? But if you just are a regular person that just wants to like, spend their lives
Right.
living their lives, this is a safe place to be. And I think we've heard horror stories. I know Jeff Weckbach gets those calls also from folks that try to play that market, and as you say, forget, and then their prices are through the roof and they're on fixed income, and it's a horrible situation. So hopefully this is a safe, effective way to manage those costs.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in a community that does not have an aggregation. I mean, I have my phone set on when my contracts come to an end because, I look at this every day and I don't want to get stuck in some auto renew on somebody's contract because we see what they do to people.
Right. Additional questions?
Not for me.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cerise.
All right, speaking of energy, we're going to have Assistant Administrator Weckbach talk about the solar capital project.
Good evening, Board. So, as you teed it up, the solar capital project, this was something that was included and contemplated in the budget book. And I know when we had the capital list brought forward in January, there were some questions. So we put together a quick presentation to provide an overview of what solar is, how it works as sort of a baseline for all of the public, and then some additional slides that provide some context on how it could work for Colerain. So on the first slide in here is your typical agenda, what we're going to talk about today. But on the next slide, we really get into the meat and potatoes of what net metering is. So those unfamiliar with what net metering is, it's kind of a change in how your electric meter works. So that slide 4 there, when you look at it, references a bi-directional meter. So when the sun is out and it's beating down on your solar panels, your meter, in theory, you're probably not using as much energy as you are actually absorbing through the panels. So your meter's running in the opposite direction. And then when it's nighttime, sun's not out, your meter starts to run the normal direction again. So under that model, really you are, sort of earning money, saving on your electric costs during the day when the heat is out, and then you're using it later on at night. And so Duke would still come out, they'd still look at your meter once a month or however frequently they do it, and whatever that number is, that's what you would pay. So if you have a really great month, you might pay nothing, and you might have a credit then on your bill that you don't have to pay for several months after. If you have a bad month, you still pay a normal bill like you normally would. So net metering is kind of the thing that makes solar energy work unless you have battery storage. If you have battery storage, then in those moments when your meter would be running in the opposite direction, what it's doing is it's fueling that fuel cell that you've got somewhere stored on site so that you have power available, just like a backup generator or some other system. So real basics on how net metering works. I know this is a very common thing for the public, especially if you have it on your own home. You'll see that this was actually stolen, this slide, from New Hampshire, but the law works the same way in Ohio as it does in a lot of other states. Next slide. So one of the reasons that we actually built this into our budget, and a big reason why we're recommending this, is the resiliency aspect associated with solar. So right now, we do not have any type of backup generator at 4300 Springdale. So if you guys recall when we had the power outage, I don't know if that was a couple months ago, down off of Harrison Avenue, and we opened up a warming shelter at the community center. Technically speaking, on EMA plans, that is not considered a warming shelter because we do not have a backup generator. So if power were to go out for this facility, there'd be no way that we'd be able to keep that facility warm. So we're not, for purposes of the Hamilton County Hazard Mitigation Plan, allowed to call it a warming shelter. What that does is it actually limits our ability to apply for some grants through FEMA dollars and other resources because we're not able to meet that. We looked a few years ago at the cost to have a backup generator put in. We had our facility manager research it, and he quoted us a price of about $80,000. So that'd be a gas-powered backup generator at that facility. Some other things to keep in mind from a resiliency standpoint. So this building in particular is subject to power blips. I'll talk about that a little bit on the last point here, but if you all recall back in 2019, we had our email server go down, and that was a big deal because it took a while for our IT director to recover those emails. That was because there was just a very strong wind that came through, caused the power to go out. Our backup uninterruptible power supply did not function properly in that moment, which you can't really test unless you're putting the power out. And so we lost the email server, and it was only a few minutes. He had the server back up, but then we had to work and he had to work tirelessly to recover that data. And so from a resiliency standpoint, you can think about energy in sort of three buckets. So you've got your overhead power lines, you've got your underground power lines, and you've got your solar. Out of those three options, underground power lines tend to be the best because they're the least likely to have any sort of natural or environmental disruptions associated with them. The overhead lines are subject to all kinds of things. You get hit by a car, you could have a really bad ice storm that comes through and brings down a line, you have a tree fall, whatever that might be. When you're driving through Colerain, you probably notice that there are a lot of overhead power lines, including feeding this facility. And that's what leads to some of the issues that we've had. Undergrounding utilities is extremely expensive. I think it was to the tune of about $1 million to underground the utilities at the corner when we were doing the Gateway Memorial. And so $1 million versus solar, which provides a lot of those resiliency benefits and is far cheaper, is another thing to keep in mind as we're thinking about this. One other thing that I wanted to note, so as we're continually looking at what's going on with credit rating agencies and how they're updating their formulas for how they're looking at communities, Moody's has recently started to change their rules. And one of the things that they're factoring now when they're evaluating communities against one another is how resilient that community is. And so they're looking at things like, do you have alternative energy supply if your facility were to go down? And in that same breath, they're looking at things like flooding and other issues as well. But that is something that's newer to what these credit agencies are looking for. And so that's something that we're keeping in mind as we're evaluating the need for this type of project. So for some comparison here, there are other communities in the area that are currently going out for bid or contemplating going out to bid for solar. The Center for Local Government, which is a cooperative group of local governments that comes together to do work, currently has a bid out, and you can see the dollar values for who is looking at doing what. Some communities are putting in $2 million. Other townships, like Anderson Township, are looking at $500,000. Others that missed out on that but are looking at the next bid cycle are Wyoming and Springfield Township. So it's very much in the zeitgeist. It's something that we're hearing a lot of these communities looking at, and something that we're all considering, especially as we're looking at our power needs and how our grids can stay online in the event of a natural disaster. So this right here would show if we wanted to be completely self-reliant on solar to pay for or to power our electricity. That is a lot of solar panels. That would be about $2.3 million. We're not recommending that in the plan. What we're actually looking at and contemplating, so all the blue for those who are watching are the areas where solar panels could go in order to get us to zero grid reliance. What we're actually looking at and contemplating is the rooftop of the community center, which would cost, I believe it's on the next slide, about $76,000. So we have a $100,000 budget, and what that could do is that would allow us some capacity to buy power cells so that we could truly have a backup generator. It would be about $20,000 more than what it would cost to just buy a backup generator. But in the times when we're not using that backup generator, it's actually helping us save money on our electric costs. So that's the proposal that we've got in mind. If you just wanted to do the solar rooftop array for our other buildings that we were looking at there on that previous slide, those are the dollar figures associated with that. So as I look at recommendations and next steps, certainly what I'm looking forward to tonight is whatever discussion and feedback you all have. Certainly if you all need more time to discuss it, that's certainly fine too. As soon as we have a green light, we'll start drafting documents and trying to get things before you, because there will be multiple steps along the way. So ideal world, you all tell us tonight, like, yeah, we think this is a good idea. We would have an approval of the bid documents, which would have to go before you all at a future meeting. We would then have a review of all the bid responses, and then we'd have to enter into a contract at some point. So there are multiple opportunities after this meeting, even if you don't provide direction, where you can weigh in and provide direction prior to making any sort of financial commitment or decision. So I hope that provides some context, and certainly open to questions that you all may have about solar and our thoughts.
Why we have you up here? You have solar in your house, right?
Yes.
And an average house is $20-something thousand, and the percentage most people are at least a half of their electric bill.
85%.
85%. And being new and signing these POAs for our Duke bills is extremely a lot of money. And part of our mantra is to go green. And if we can curtail 85, whatever percent of what building we do, I think it's a significant amount.
Yeah,
And you had given me projections also that it would pay itself off in how many years, and then we got free electric
Yep.
for, so I just would like the township to know we're gonna be saving a lot more money.
Yeah, so the systems would pay for themselves. They tend to have a warranty of 25 plus years. Usually the payoff period can range from 10 years to 15 years, just depending on the system that gets installed and if you're doing things like adding the batteries. So that's where sometimes the payoff period is a little longer because you're keeping that fuel cell, which
Right.
is a little more expensive. So, yep.
So I don't know a whole lot about solar, but technology in general. I was never one that went out and bought one of those $5,000 42-inch TVs that now you can get at Walmart at for $99. Where are we in kind of the life cycle of technology and solar? I mean, I think we're still in the infancy. Is that something that you're saying it's going to be paid back in 10 years? Is that something in 5 years that's going to cost half of what it costs now?
I think what we're coming up against right now is supply and demand. So, in the early stages of solar, the panels were really only good for 5 to 10 years. And the way that they used to function, if you had a small little dent or crack or something in like the bottom corner, the whole panel didn't work properly. Now they've been able to come to a place where technology-wise, that isn't an issue. So if you have a hailstorm and it leaves a little crack, it's still going to function at, instead of 100% efficiency, it'd be closer to 95% or whatever that little section was that was impacted. With that and understanding some of those concerns, that's why now a lot of days these solar panels come with 25-year warranties, so that if you are seeing something like that happen, it gets replaced at no charge. When it comes to your question about will it become cheaper over time, I'm not sure. And that's with all of this sort of thing. It has come down quite a bit over the last several years. We also have the competing interests at the federal level where some of the tax credits are going away. So I don't know how that's really going to play in and shape the demand side. Because right now I think demand is a little higher than it was in prior years, because I believe the federal tax credits drop next year and then each year after that precipitously.
And as far as now, and again, the technology, I'm not that conversant in. There are batteries now to store it, but they're just cost too much, right?
It depends on the batteries that you get and how they tie into the system. So on a residential solar, it could cost $5,000 for the batteries. So if you're talking $20,000 for the panel, $5,000 for the batteries, so you're talking, I don't know, is that a quarter of the cost, roughly?
Okay.
So, and that's why when we were teeing up the community center and the potential there, if the amount that we go out to bid for is about $100,000, you could probably get the batteries that you need in order to have that building still function if this whole grid went down. Right now we do have backup generators on this facility. We do have backup generators on 4160, but we don't have anything at 4300.
What's the longevity of those batteries, and is there something in the contract that would, that they would replace it in a certain?
Yeah. Usually the warranties wind up being about the same for the batteries as they are for the panels, because it's treated as an entire system.
Okay, a unit, okay. So it would be under warranty for that amount of time.
Well, and I think that, and again, I'm not an expert in this at all. I think the added value to what Elon Musk is doing is not in the electrical vehicle; it's in the battery, and that one day that battery can translate to homes and buildings and make it more cost efficient. So my concern is on this is that you keep your powder dry somewhat, because if you spend it too early, you're spending too much, and that's from my point of view, that's something that now that I understand kind of where we're headed with this, that I'm going to need to do some more research on, and find people that can explain it to a dumb history teacher.
Sure. And $76,000 is not a small amount of money, but compared to what the cost would be for the entire facility, it comparative wise is lower. So,
And an average home's about $20,000 to $25,000 just for a single residential home. So square footage wise, we're getting a lot more for.
Right, because it's a lot bigger.
Absolutely,
facility.
and I know that one trend, I talked to a couple of people, one trend that I think City of Cincinnati's pushing for, and they're kind of, believe it or not, on the front runners on this, is things like solar farms and things like that. So there's a lot of things I don't know about this that this kind of gives me the prep work and the boundaries and the guidance to look further. And that's just one trustee. But I thank you and Mr. Unger.
And just for when it comes to, because you mentioned the utility scale solar, you tend to need at least a 10-acre site. And when you do that, then you can actually build solar fields that would actually supply enough to the grid that you make money off of them. So that's something else to keep in mind, and we can certainly talk more
Which
about
I saw last week in places I've never seen before. South Carolina, when I drove, it's just packed with them, in Georgia, and I was like, wow, that's a little surprising to me. Mr. Unger, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Intermittent power is good, intermittently, when it's working. If we are to be a facility that is designed for emergency usage of the buildings, whether it's in a natural disaster event or whatever, we probably need to get a generator over there. When this came up back in January, when we discussed the budget, I did a little bit of research, and I wasn't able to find a whole lot of commercial buildings here in Colerain Township that have taken this step, and they've probably done a lot of cost analysis on it. And even the new one of our newest, biggest buildings, Rumpke, does not have any solar incorporated into their plan, and what's that building, 3 years old? And as far as maintaining in the big giant picture of things, I think it's important that we maintain, as a Southwest Ohio, maintain a strong base supply of power. And when more and more agencies and businesses and homes start buying intermittent power, and then, when the sun's not shining or it's cold or they're covered in snow or ice, and they all want to go back to the base load, which, has been whittled away because people are tending to get off of it, all of a sudden there's no base load there, and you get a situation like what happened out in Kansas last year, in Kansas City, or in Texas, where all of a sudden they never had their base load developed enough, or they had let the base load fall aside, and then you've got a community-wide disaster. I know in the Kansas City case, half the side of it in Kansas went almost 15 hours without any power on a 20-degree day, and it was just because they've gotten so much into power that works great when the sun is shining. I'd have to wonder what the annual maintenance cost is of these once they're installed. I don't know that, and if you do, that would be great. And how would that affect our usage here? Meaning, if we buy less watts and less energy, does that change our rate? And we kind of had that discussion with the gas in a little bit, but this isn't. I guess it's kind of related to gas because we'd be getting some heat use off of that solar also. So I would say at this point, based on, I haven't seen a whole lot of commercial businesses embrace this to that degree. I would, kind of let's wait and see what comes up.
Sure, and I know Jared Allig has been tracking in terms of his monthly reports how many solar permits do come through. So I think starting in late 2021, we started including that as part of our monthly dashboard that gets posted to the public. I want to say the first building that I was aware of was maybe the Pep Boys facility down near Galbraith.
Big Bob's.
Or Big
Carpet.
Bob's,
Yep.
yeah. So there are some. It's definitely not the vast majority of private and commercial buildings, but it's starting to pick up a lot more, and we're starting to see not only more on the commercial side, but also the residential side. So.
Right. And my concern is when the base infrastructure goes away, because enough people are doing this, then we don't have that reliable power, and the whole society's dependent on intermittent power, and then you have a 5 below zero day or a big demand day, and all of a sudden there's brownouts and that type of thing. So as a big general picture of things, that's kind of my hesitation until the technology comes along substantially. So,
Yep.
and I just don't think we're there yet. So
in terms of next steps, am I hearing take a pause on this issue, bring it back for more discussion? What would you guys, as a board, prefer to do?
I would say look into putting a generator on that other building,
Okay.
so that we have an emergency facility, which, people have their own. I have my own emergency plan at home, and it very likely doesn't involve the township, but we should have that if we need to qualify to be a prepared municipality. So that'd be my recommendation, is look into a generator for that building.
My point would be that your timeline is fine with me, and we vote on a bid document approval April 12th, and at that point, I'll be prepared to say yay or nay, and it seems like Mr. Unger will be prepared, and
I'm for this project. I would like to see more.
so for next step, so the bid document would be April 12th, and then we would vote to accept.
To release the bid.
Release the bid, yeah. And at that point, if the noes carry the day, we won't release the bid. If the yeses do, we will.
Sure.
And we've got I appreciate the legwork. We've got the legwork done. If we want to bring it back at any point in time, perhaps even this board says in November, let's bring this back. And that's assuming that right now I'm Switzerland. I don't know. I don't know what I don't know. So I don't have a feeling yay or nay on it. You tell me we save money and that gets my attention quickly. I'm cheap.
But it's really, a generator's 80,000, the solar project's 100, correct? So there's no savings of monies with a backup generator, correct?
Correct. It would
Yeah.
sit dormant until we needed
Right.
it. So April
What's the
12th.
life cycle of a generator like that?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I would imagine we've probably had this one since we built the building in '97. So.
And I think you run it every month for a few minutes just as a maintenance item.
So, and I will say, when I built this, it was, I didn't update this slide when I built this slide deck back in February. So April 12th might be a little aggressive, but I will do my best to get a bid
Okay.
document to you guys.
I think that if it goes on to May, I think that's even better. That gives us a longer lead time. So I was just going by your
Yeah.
timeline.
I forgot that I was going to present this last month, so that's on me. Thank you, board.
All right, thank you. All right, citizens address. I have a number of citizens address items to. Are there any more? All right. All right. First, Ms. Wright. Evening.
Stephanie Wright,
There you go.
3729 Blue Rock Road. I asked the board for just maybe a few more seconds this evening. I do have a lot to cover on the agenda. None of it is repetitive, so please bear with me. Tonight on the agenda, we have under the administration on the agenda, item C, compensation of assistant administrator, and D, performance and compensation of township administrator. I'd like to know if this is the first discussion you've had on this issue, and just have you all talked about this prior to it being on tonight's agenda? And when will it be in effect? I received the merit pool increase, which is the board approved a dollar amount to be split up between township non-union employees. And I was wondering if that was in consideration for the raises that are given to township administrator and assistant administrator. I have a question about the assistant chief of police. Will that be a position that will now be ongoing in the township? It was recently created to shadow in a replacement for Chief Denny, and I was just wondering if that position will now be an ongoing position. I would like to know from each of the trustees if they could share with us a little bit to report on the information that was gained from their attendance at the community conversation held at the Senior Center on 2/22/2022. There was a discussion about the gun range, and I know that the three of you were in attendance there. And I was just wondering if you could share with the rest of the community a little feedback on what you gained from that. I noticed on the website recently that the event hall, which is A and B, small hall and large hall at Colerain Township Community Center, is closed. I don't remember that ever being addressed to residents. I just happened to stumble across it on our website. I was wondering when this was decided, who decided it, and what maybe are plans that they have for those rentals. I have some old business from the agenda for the meeting of February 8th, 2022. Under Public Safety, Agenda Item A, motion authorizing Township Administrator to execute a contract with Rumpke and 1-800-GOT-JUNK for trash abatement. I have asked for public records for a signed copy of the agreement between Rumpke and the Township and 1-800-GOT-JUNK. I ask on 2/22 and I ask again on 3/7. And there is no public records request to meet my request. So I was just wondering how we're operating without a contract. And then also in the meeting on February 8th, on Public Safety, Agenda Item B, motion to authorize Township Administrator to execute agreement with the Police Department for rotation of wreckers and impound fees. What is the status of this? It was tabled. I was assuming it would be brought back on this agenda, but I don't see it. Also at that meeting, under Development, Agenda Item A, resolution adopting text amendments to zoning resolution related to mobile food services. Resolution number is 1022. I don't know if any of you have taken a chance to look at that application, if that's what you want to call it. It's something that's been in use by the zoning department for years. Someone just typed in a little space that says mobile food truck. I don't think that's very professional, or it just makes no sense. And then as far as the food truck goes, who will be in charge of enforcing this? Will it be addressed proactively? If so, by who? And previously, they have been in our township, and nothing has ever come of anyone not being in compliance. They just don't do anything about it. And so I don't understand the reason we spend time, money, and energy implementing policy and procedures that don't have any follow-through. And also, it's for mobile food vendors. And we also have a transient vendor resolution. I was wondering if that is handled by the police department or the zoning department. So, you know, the difference obviously is a food vendor versus someone who sets up a Bengals stand on a corner. You know, are we still implementing and following procedure for those vendors that are coming into our community and making sure that they are licensed and legit? Also in the meeting, under Development, Item C, resolution adapting the zoning resolution relating to charitable donation containers, Resolution 1122. As of 2/17/2022, through a public records request, nothing's happened. There are no applications, there's no contact with the vendors. So I know it's only been a month, but I was really hoping that this would be something on the front of the agenda and we would get this going. I've only seen an increase in illegal dumping at these bins. If it is all helpful to the zoning board or whoever's in charge of that, I do have a complete list of all of the zoning bins, their providers, phone numbers, locations, and contact information, if that would be helpful in expediting this enforcement. Back to the meeting.
If we could kind of wrap it, you're at 7.5 minutes right now, so.
I'm trying. Okay. About the vacant and foreclosed property that we signed an agreement in on November 9th, 2021 with ProChamps to investigate and accept applications for vacant building maintenance license agreements. We have had 2 since then. 2. I could have done 30 in a day. So the concern was back then that they were out of state. My concern is still that they're out of state and not doing what needs to be done. I'll leave on this note that I spoke with a lady by the name of Jessie Richardson today at Hamilton County. She is the health educator for We Thrive in Hamilton County. And to my understanding that she has a meeting set up next week with someone in our fire department to discuss implementing We Thrive again in our community, which I think is very important and can help with some of the issues of blighted property, the dumping at the trash container or the donation bins. So I thank you for your time, and I would like to submit my application for We Thrive Committee.
All right, if you have additional items that you did not get to, if you email me those. I'll do my best to get you some answers. Is this the same?
No, it's a different, well,
Okay.
it's the same application, but it has to be formed differently.
Okay, got it. I'm going to pass that.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Baker, there we go. Okay, thank you. And does Mr. Baker have the previous one too? Okay, all right. Thank you, Ms. Moore.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I have some questions about the approved policies and procedures that you approved at the last meeting. I apologize if some of them are repeated. I have brought to your attention the 2018, 19, and 2020 audits that the township has not taken any corrective action on the gifts and donation policy. I brought this up several times over the past year. Now, you approved a donation policy but neglected to move forward on the gift policy. Taxpayer funds were used to purchase a parting gift for a former trustee. What is your reluctance about having a policy or something like that? It's obvious that Mr. Mills doesn't want it. He's claimed numerous times that we do have a policy when, to this day, we do not. Is that why you won't approve a policy? Has the board thought about policies for zoning commissions, CIC, or We Thrive? There should be policies in place, just as there is a policy for 2 weeks of vacation on the day you're hired of employment. It's your responsibility to have these policies in place unless someone wants to misrepresent it the way it is done or the way it should be done. The policy for retire, rehire does not show that a public hearing is required. I brought that up at the last meeting. To be fair, the board should agree on a percentage for cut in pay when the situation arises. Formerly, department heads were the only employees receiving this benefit, and they took 20% until it was 20% reduction in salary until an administrative assistant was given this opportunity without any cut in pay, the same wage, receiving a pay increase every year, 4 weeks vacation, and collecting a full pension. I question again your policy on public records. It states that records of a certified public accountant or public accountant in the performance of an audit of the public office are excluded as public record. Those records are public record in dissimilarity to your policy. I request that that be corrected in your policy. Regarding the policy for providing coffee, meals, refreshments, or amenities, there you have not placed a dollar limit on that. You're responsible for taxpayer money, and I just wonder why you're unwilling to do that. I'll just say in the past, we had an administrator who would get food for the Financial Advisory Committee and spend like $100 on pizza when there were only 4 people there, and that way they got to eat all of the leftovers the next day. I had asked or sent a request to Mr. Baker for some information on the new salary list or new hourly wages list. And it says on there, some of them effective pay period 13, some say pay period 20, whatever. So I asked if that was not in effect right now, because it has new wage listed there. So I just want to know, is that the wage that will be given on pay period, whatever says on the paper? What do salary bands issue mean? Is there ever a point when someone reaches the top of a pay scale, or are they assured an increase every year? We have 2 vacant positions with wages of $31,200 and $90,001.60. Shouldn't the pay be based on the qualifications of a person hired for that position? If they have no experience or minimal experience, should they still start at a high wage? These things should be considered for any position. As far as performance and compensation of Township Administrator on the agenda tonight, a discussion and it says a discussion and potential action related to the performance and compensation of the Township Administrator. It appears from a public record request that this has already taken place. I have a copy that shows, along with other increases, Mr. Mills' new salary is $132,620.80 by a trustee decision. When and where was that decision made? And as far as his evaluation, you have the right to discuss that in executive session. And most of us would prefer that you keep it that way. And if you've already made the decision, which it looks like you did, you still don't understand the Sunshine Law. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Perrone. Good evening.
Good evening, trustees and attendees and so forth. First, just try to stick with the 5-minute clock. And if I go over 5 minutes, hook me. I had 3 items, so I'm going to add a 4th, the solar capital project, because in my experience, green energy, green technology looks great on paper. It's touted and it's all economical, et cetera, but there's a lot of downsides. Maybe it works with you, maybe it works with you, Jeff, but there's a lot of downsides we need to consider. And Dan, I agree, it needs to be looked at, and you can't rely upon it during emergencies. Power lines go down, unless you get battery backup, and there's one of the Achilles heels. The batteries are lithium-ion batteries, and those things are as dangerous as you can get. Chief Wells and I had a little discussion about lithium-ion batteries, and if we ever have a fire, we're in trouble. Maybe a more pleasant note. I did attend the February 22nd meeting with Colerain, Hamilton County, the city of Cincinnati, the engineers, and so forth on the gun range. After looking at the project, looking at the schematics, with discussions and so forth, I really believe with moving thousands of cubic yards of dirt, which they're going to do, the berms and the sound attenuation and ballistic attenuation they're going to have, that the residents probably will hear less noise with this construction if it's built than they currently do. The only downside may be 30 or 40 more cars coming in over the day on the road. I don't consider that to be a major issue compared to what I've seen. The second issue is concerning the moratorium on smoking devices and vapor devices. I can't remember if the board was here the last time I talked about this. I agree with the moratorium. I have heard and talked to a few people who have used these devices to stop smoking, and that's a good thing. But there's a insidious downside to this, and the fact that a lot of vaping happens now in elementary schools, high schools, etc. And there is a risk of chronic obstructive pulmonary disease from these devices. It's more and more well documented. Last time I brought it up is recently was published as popcorn lung. But the same type of flavorants that are used in popcorn, back when microwave popcorn, are the very similar ones, different flavors that are used in these vaping devices. Chronic use of these will cause pulmonary obliterance. In other words, your lungs start obliterating. So I agree with your doing this, and really they're more medical devices than anything else. The third issue really came to mind on Friday's disaster on Colerain Avenue. With the death and collision up there by the mall. And I know the township has been pushing for, we need trash abatement and stop people from dumping couches and what have you. But I find the issue here of crime and criminals to be a bigger issue than dumping. Though dumping, I wish it didn't happen. But the way society is gone now, and as a person who used to do this for an assistant administrator, I'm going to try to bring you a solution if you want to think about it. But Colerain Township, because of its location, not because we're a crime haven, and the police chief and our responders, police and EMS do a great job. But our location, we get bodies dumped, we now get people dumped, we get drive-bys, we have contract killings. And with the individual on Friday who was out on parole, obviously not supervised, stealing a car, driving 80, 90 miles an hour, and killing a person and causing total disruption to the township. Our court systems have gotten too woke. Some of the suggestions, if you want to consider it, is that you communicate with the Hamilton County administrations, the judges, the State House through Cindy, that some of these bail reforms need to be reversed. People need to pay full freight on their bail. Some people should not get bail at all. Some people are so deprived that they shouldn't see public. The other thing is the State House is now debating, and I've hit my time, the death penalty, and I'm for the death penalty. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Fiedleday.
Good evening, all.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I got a couple pieces of paper I'd like to give you guys. Just a little information, if that's okay. If that's okay?
Yes, yes, sorry.
This is the township borderline here, all the way around. Here. This is the, all these here, all that dark here. The less, this is how many people left the township. This 907 or 986, whatever it is, where you all want to put the shooting range. And that's, all these are new people since the last census. You might want to talk to them about all that.
Yeah.
This is the same thing I got her. This is the outline of our township right here. This is the people that, all these here, and this one, these here, ones up by Rumpkin, that have left this past year, not past year, past 10 years. And this is the people that did move here, where you all want to put that shooting range.
Yeah, I don't want to put the shooting range anywhere. It's the county that's doing it. We don't have a vote.
What it is, you guys had your own secret, I don't want to talk to you about it right now.
Oh,
Anyway,
okay.
The little red dot is where I think
You can just keep it because it doesn't matter.
it should.
Well, we don't vote on it, sir. It's not our vote. It's not our property.
I know it is.
And there wasn't a secret meeting. I mean, what?
Sure was.
There are people there.
5 people from the township.
It was advertised.
21,000.
Okay, all right.
You care for it?
Yeah, I'll take a look at what you got, Bernie, sure.
This is the old news, you've probably seen that.
Right.
You can see also where, the people at, they shouldn't be getting old. The people in, at Evadale, Woodlawn, Lincoln Heights would like to have it all out here.
Right.
So, let's see how that helps us. I did. This here is, all these black spots are in these here numbers, but if they stay the same, they're the same. This is where all of them are dark. They left this big bunch up by Rumpke. This here, they all total up to this 876 residents. This here, where you all want to put the shooting range, it's not an offset that by that, and that's how many people are in there now.
Okay.
I suggest you be careful.
Thank you.
I'm sorry that some of you think that you did something, but you know what? I usually kind of keep up with the township a little bit, try to. But this whole thing that you guys advertised was all for the other people, not for the residents. It acted like it was for residents. As the Colerain Township was hosting a community conversation about this county and city public safety facility that is being proposed on East Mine River Road. The facility will include an expanded gun range, real expanded, high-power rifles and all, and bombs. Training facility. The presentation will be there will be a presentation by the county, city on their proposal and an opportunity to ask questions and provide feedback on the proposal. Everyone is encouraged to attend. When you sent out 5 notices, 5 people attended. It was 5 days. That wasn't a working day. That's right. It was 5 days, working days. When they wanted to call here, you had 5 days to do it in. You had since June 29th 2020. That's when this was printed here. Everybody's been kind of working on this kind of backdoorish. I hate that. It's not necessary to do that. But something that stinks. When y'all knew about it, it's wrong. So y'all did know about it. So I guess what I'm really getting at is the property is counties. They have to comply with our zoning. Nobody's mentioned that. And you might say, well, it's got their shoot, you can't regulate that. Oh yeah, we can. It isn't shooting. They got a bomb range they want to put in there. They want to put bombs in. I know what those are because the former sheriff did that a few years back. It rocked the whole valley. Did it once. Must have picked something up, but there's not going to be bombs down there. And then all the high-powered rifles that you reach out 300 yards and put a bullet in somebody. They're not quiet. You guys all read what the proposal is, right? So you all know all this. You act like you didn't know anything. The bottom line is, so the high-powered rifles, you all said, well, down the street there's a gun range and that's dog and game. They don't let anything like that on that place, high-powered rifles. They don't use not any center-fire rifles down there. So you were blasting some things that were not true. And I guess that's the part that bothers me more than anything, it's when it's not true. We do have the noise resolution. You can say, well, it's a gun and it's covered under, but you're changing the whole operation. It's not somebody's backyard. So you best take it through the zoning. That's what I would suggest. Or you'd be forced to. A resolution of noise control happened back in 2003. Had a long time. It says, whereas the Board of Trustees of Colerain Township, Hamilton County, Ohio, has determined that excessively loud noise from certain sound amplification devices and other sources and areas within the township zoned for residential, that's what this is about, uses serves no public purpose and sometimes a nuisance and is detrimental to the public health, welfare, safety, and quality of life within Colerain Township. That's what I'm asking you folks to think about, the quality of life of everybody in Colerain Township. And I think barging ahead with this because a few people, meaning the city, they don't care what happens out here. I do. I assume you all do. But that shooting range on East Miami River Road cannot happen. That's all I'll say. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. I think is that the end of, which? You want to pass it? Yeah, I got everybody.
Was that the last one?
Yeah.
Our guest has arrived. I wonder if we could put her into the, earlier
Okay.
in the meeting. We
You were just- you're
motioned to
almost
change the
right.
agenda. Do we need
15.
to?
I think you can just go ahead.
I can
Yeah,
just
we
go
just,
ahead.
yeah. So let's move back up to, and we,
Item 6, presentations. Item B, proclamation by the Board of Trustees for Kathy's Happy Organs and Pianos. Kathy Schwartz is the owner of a business in Northgate Mall and probably the longest lasting business up there. And Kathy is tough and she is, has stuck it out through a number of changes. She got bumped to the other end of the mall when Ashley Furniture came in and she just goes up there and works every day and has hundreds of organ and piano students and has done a really great job. And yes, there is activity in Northgate Mall, and you'll find it up at Kathy's. She has been in music education and in that line of business probably all of her life. She's a big Joe Burrow fan because she's got something about LSU that I never have quite figured out. But she's one of the hardest working small business owners I've ever met. And she is about to celebrate, I guess, her 30 years in business and 20 years at the mall. So I would like to read this proclamation. Proclamation recognizing March 20th, 2022 as Kathy's Happy Organs and Pianos Day in Colerain Township, Hamilton County, Ohio. Be it proclaimed by the Township Trustees of Colerain Township that whereas Kathy Schwartz, owner of Kathy's Happy Organs and Pianos, has been in the music business for over 30 years, whereas Kathy began the program SONG Song, which the acronym is Supporting Organists for the Next Generation, which also provides free organs to young music students taking organ lessons, with the goal assuring there will be church organists well into the future. Whereas, in addition to lessons, Kathy's Happy Organs and Pianos has professional concerts throughout the year, offers workshops, and customizes private group lessons and parties to help celebrate a special occasion for the group. And whereas Kathy's Happy Organs and Pianos has been a pillar of the community, we congratulate Kathy on her 20th anniversary in Northgate Mall and thank her for her contributions to Colerain Township. Be it proclaimed that the Colerain Township Board of Trustees does hereby recognize March 20th, 2022 as Kathy's Happy Organs and Pianos Day in Colerain Township. And after this vote, if it's approved, it will be adopted the 8th day of March 2022. So I would motion that we adopt this proclamation.
I'll second.
All right, we have a duly noted motion and a second. Any discussion?
Did you want to say anything, Kathy?
Can you tell us how Dan has improved as a student?
And yes, I met Kathy when she was down the other end of the mall, and I've been taking lessons there for about 11 years. But please approach the mic. Please come to the microphone.
11 years?
No, I tell people nobody's going to Carnegie Hall unless they buy a ticket. But I take not the, if you really want to be a professional, you go to CCM, you pay your $50,000, $60,000, works 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, and you can do it. But I take, my customers are the people that woulda, coulda, shoulda, and they can. Even Dan can, Like, because I started, it wasn't 30 years ago, I started, 40 years ago. And up in Michigan, and people used to come by, because I worked in a mall there too, used to come by and tap me on the shoulder and say, "You're getting better, you're getting better." And that's what it's about. It's just getting better. And we're just hanging on in Northgate, working, and the mall has been very cooperative with me. I will say this, Colerain Township and the mall has been very, they've been very cooperative. People I can't complain. I can't complain. We'd always like, an anchor besides me, on where Sears used to be, but,
And they recently expanded their hours till 8, which just happened in the last week or two, so that's why you came up here a little late this evening.
They just expanded the hours from 10 till 8, so that and it's just getting back after COVID, and I hope that, that they'll be, they've started putting chairs out in the mall, and they've cleaned the carpets, and we're trying to get some people back to shopping again.
And I think down the road, as that property eventually gets redeveloped,
God knows.
hopefully.
I keep asking. I can't say. I can't say. Everybody. They're improving it for some reason. It needed a lot of work. Nothing happened. Nothing happened for 2 years.
And something might happen sooner than later. Who knows?
This is the thing about the Colerain. This is a shopping corridor, and you just have to appeal to the shoppers, and so that I say I can't say the mall has been very cooperative. I don't know. I've gone through some bad owners and some good owners. I've gone through 4 owners, I think, in the last 20 years. And Tabani's been better than most. And they've got a new manager who's just learning. He's going out and meeting the people. He's just learning the people. Maybe we should get him out here. Have you talked to him?
That would be our economic development director, would be
Yeah.
David Miller.
Go
But
ahead,
anyway,
right, yeah, just go, yeah, his name is Jim Ogden, and go talk to him, because I don't,
and we'll let you catch up with David after,
yeah.
after the, I
Okay,
think we
but
still need to
anyhow,
vote
yeah,
on this,
so,
don't we?
I can't say anything about what the mall's doing, because they don't tell me anything. We just we live with rumors like everybody else.
I appreciate you hanging in there, and you're tough, and you work very hard over a very long period of time, so
I
congratulations.
wouldn't have done it had not the customers been so wonderful. And I have to say this, like, a lot of we do is just volunteers, and they help, and they do everything, and they've been really wonderful. Everybody that I hire, has been a student or a friend of a student or working like that, and that's who comes out here.
Well,
Well, we certainly thank you for being in the township, and I think we need to vote and actually make it official.
Ms. Orich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you,
So
Keith.
we'll sign this, and I can bring it on the 20th. And,
Thank you.
thank you, Board, for putting Kathy on when she got here. She's probably a very long day today.
Absolutely. We're going on to administrative reports. I don't know, Mr. Mills, I have a page in the full front, a back, and a half. Do you want me to go through the questions, or do you want to hit them as you had them, or?
Yeah, either way, whatever you like.
Okay, so, and I think that I've got them all here, so that's why I'm suggesting that. So the merit pool increase for township administrator and assistant administrator was for assistant. There was, part of that merit pool was for assistant. That does not cover administrator. Yeah. The chief of police, is it ongoing? Well, that's a discussion. It was created for the movement for chief to retire, and we will look at that again, I think. Is that?
Sure. I mean, it was intended to sunset, but
Yes.
that's what we did.
And that's my understanding, is it's going to sunset
That was
when
the
Chief Denny retires.
Right.
All right, the event hall, and I know that you did some budget work on that.
Yes. So when we were putting together our budget, we take a look at all of our operations, and we lose money on every rental. And so when you lose money on every transaction, you don't make that up in volume. You don't. So
Get a bigger truck.
right. So the idea here is that we took a look at something that was losing money, and we said, let's pause this and find out, is this really providing value to the residents? And is this going to be sorely missed if we stop losing money on this every month, every weekend? We paused it through COVID. There wasn't a huge demand for the service, and then coming out of COVID, there hasn't been a huge demand for the service. So, so in the last budget, I believe it was called out that this was going to transition to a dormancy, and we'll reevaluate the use of the
And
property.
I don't have the paperwork in front of me, but my recollection was it's a large sum of money that was involved.
It was.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
The public safety rotation wreckers impound, that's still going through, that still needed some legal handling. Mobile food service agreement application,
That's a zoning certificate application?
enforcement, yeah.
Oh, enforcement of food trucks?
How it's addressed if you're not in compliance, and who, do the police or zoning do it versus mobile versus transient vendors?
Okay, so it's a part of so the Board of Trustees amended the zoning resolution at the last meeting. And so if you violate that section of the zoning resolution, it's a zoning violation. So it's treated as any other zoning violation. Typically, zoning violations are handled by Chris Cavallero in the police department, but it's often in conjunction with our zoning administrator, Mr. Jared Alec. So there's cross-departmental work on zoning violations. The form is just the zoning certificate application, and yes, there was an addition that was needed on the application for a food truck. In the past, food trucks were sort of tried to be handled through the transient vendor licensing process, which happens through the police department, but I really don't think that is what the transient vendor license was intended to be used for. That transient vendor license, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chief, was really the door-to-door salesman stopping that, and or getting a handle on the door-to-door salesman folks. So, so that was a clunky way of handling food trucks, and the zoning resolution is really where that belongs.
In the status of the charitable donation container applications.
Yep, and I think, well, here, we met on this recently. Let me see if I can, I don't want to steal any of Mr. Miller's thunder, but let me see if I can find that real quick. Well, suffice to say that currently we are in the process of inventorying the locations of all of the donation bins. So Ms. Wright said that she has a list.
She has a list.
That's awesome. So send those in. That would be very helpful. We've identified 12 so far, and so the idea here is that the first step is inventory, find out where they all are. Second step is let the business owners know that the law has changed and give them a date by which they need to become compliant. I think that's fair. The idea is 30 days of notice from a letter saying, hey, the trustees changed the law, you need to register these things, it needs a zoning certificate. So so then at the end of the 30 days, then it becomes an enforcement issue. And that's when we'll know the location, they'll have been given notice, and then we'll go out and tag it through the code enforcement process.
So Ms. Wright, if you could email that out and send me a copy too, I would appreciate it. Pro-champs, Ms. Wright talked about too. I asked for the same document. It might have been afterwards because there weren't hundreds on it yet, but there were more.
Yeah, so we've received a check for, I think it was 800 and then 5,600 or something like that. We've received more in the last, more revenue in the last 2 months than we have in the entire year of 2021. So that sort of correlates to the number of properties that are being registered. So there are, it is working.
Okay, and from Ms. Moore, the corrective action on gift and donation policy. It's my recollection that we have a gift and donation policy. I know that I had a conversation with Ms. Moore about it, that she felt it wasn't appropriate for not the donation. I think donation was fine, but the gift, and I guess we can.
That's 4.1, Matt. I was just looking that up.
We just didn't put a limit on it.
No, yeah, so it's on the board, and we've showed this for the last couple of trustee meetings.
I didn't know you had it up there. I was sitting here looking for it.
Because I think Ms. Moore has made this comment multiple times, but all you need to do is go to the policy book, and here it is right here, making donations. So this is the policy for. So that is the policy that
for donations. I think that and we had this discussion, you and I, when we went through that. I think there's a separate gift thing in there that we talked about too, I thought.
So,
or maybe it's the wording within the donations. So that's donations to like whatever, like Big Brothers or something. This would apply to I'm retiring and rolling into the sunset, and y'all are going to buy me a brand new BMW or something.
Jeff Weckbach, am I looking in a different place?
No, I think the board at the last meeting discussed that and had decided that they didn't need to change the policy because they were going to approve a gift if a gift was going to be given, because
That's
there's a robust discussion about 25 years versus 5 years versus all these other parameters. And is it ever appropriate? And I think that was what it was like.
So maybe in this is something that I'll tackle. I'll go back and look at a couple. Mr. Weckbach, if you couldn't hear it, he said that he reminded us that the discussion was pretty robust and lengthy, and that the idea was we would have to approve the spending anyway. But I think just in all fairness, maybe, and I'll take the point on this. I'll go back and look at some other policies for some other communities and see if there is a gift, and put this to bed either way, one way or another.
Awesome.
Retire, rehire. The public meeting being required, is that a requirement?
If I recollect that should be, I think pursuant to the statute, I think it's included in there. So
Right, and I don't think we've.
I wrote that down. I don't know if that's been updated in quite some time, so I'll take a look at that.
Okay, and that also includes with the pay. For some reason, I recall that you get started at the lowest. The lowest pay amount.
If somebody wants to come back after they retire, you would start at that base salary.
The base
and
salary.
never move from that salary.
Yeah. Policy on,
was the discussion.
Yeah.
It's the, policy 132 is the retire, rehire policy. So,
All right, public records with the CPA.
yeah, so, work papers, correct me if I'm wrong, work papers of a public auditing organization are not public records, and so,
Come to the mic. So oftentimes when we're in the middle of the audit with the state audit, the auditor tells us every single paper they are working on and that they are sending to us and they're asking of us is not a public record until the audit is over. So
Okay.
that's what that means. And this is from the state auditor themselves because they don't, for whatever reason, want anybody to know what they're asking or what they're looking for. So that's why that's there, because that came directly from them to us.
But when it's completed, then it would be considered a public record.
Because then it's not a working paper anymore,
Right.
it's a document.
Well, I think it's to cover themselves too if they make a mistake.
Yeah, and this is word for word what the auditor
Okay.
told us.
Right, and that sounds consistent with what I read the last time that we received those, is it's the auditor, it's not us, it's them that want to protect their work.
Even when they send us a draft, they tell us it's a draft, you're not allowed to share this with anybody until it's final. So that's where that language comes from.
All right. The no dollar limit on coffee and refreshments,
I recall that was $3,000.
$3,000, I think, yeah.
And what that's for is when we have volunteers, such as on Recycle Day, or anything else where large numbers of people are showing up to volunteer, is we provide water and coffee or whatever, and that way at least we've got it documented that we have a policy on that. And did the resolution say $3,000 on it?
I don't think that the resolution
Was it
did, but
introduced that
it
way?
specified, Public Give Back Day, it specified a number
Yeah,
of.
the board isn't getting, and we're not getting that, it's for volunteers generally.
Generally, or it's, there are certain things that are spelled out in that resolution, and we were very clear in the resolution what it could be used for.
Right,
So,
and I can't remember which meeting that was, but it was this year.
yeah, it's in the agenda, it's in the minutes, it's been debated, it's been approved.
I think Ms. Moore was talking about pizza parties and different luncheons that
I mean, one of the things that we do every year is have a employee appreciation meal at the end of the year. That's typically not pizza, it's chicken. I don't know. Oftentimes the chicken goes back to the firehouses so that the guys can, whatever. If there's extra chicken, yeah, sure, people eat leftovers. We don't like waste. Yeah, I mean, again, I would encourage folks to find another township that has a policy that is so specific about, because I think that we have the best and most specific policies that there are. I think that we're a model. And
The salary bands does someone hit the top of the pay scale ever? And pay should be based on qualification. I agree 1,000%. Pay should be based upon qualification. There are qualifications listed for each position too. So I can't come in with, for instance, no experience and I'm 19 years old and apply to be economic development director. I mean, so the process is that it's spelled out first of all, it's spelled out in the position breakdown in this policy book. Then it's spelled out again when the call for applications come. And then if somebody applies and they lack the qualifications, you're not going to interview them. And if you interview them and give them the job, we're not going to hire them. Even if it's just a consent item on the agenda. So there are a number of checks and balances. The pay is roughly to show you what people in that same position get paid in other townships, and we're trying to be within the kind of the mid-range of that. Would that be a fair assessment?
yeah, I mean, so there is a salary. The short answer is yes, there is a salary range, and that range is hard and fast, and you don't exceed the range. Like that's the range of the role. Now that range can move over time because each year the board considers the job descriptions and organizational chart of the organization, and so that's what sets the salary range. And again, this is something that I'm incredibly proud of. We have a job description, salary range, organizational chart. I challenge folks to find other communities where this is so comprehensive and available.
Because that's the complaint in other places, other jurisdictions, where it's still a good old boy network, is that if you know somebody, you get paid maybe more than if you don't know somebody, and I think that's always the issue. The performance of administrator and assistant administrator, the administrative performance, we are going to talk about when we're going to review you in a little bit, and that came from executive session. The 132,000, I think, is the last amount that from the previous board, right?
Yes, I mean, the question was, where did that decision get made? It was made in this room in an open meeting.
Right. There was a motion, I think, by Raj, Raj Kabal, and we made it. Bruce talked about solar capital in February, the gun range, smoking devices, the court system. Yes, I don't think there's any disagreement up here on that, and I mean that's reflective at the ballot box, I think, and nobody knows better than that whole system than Mr. Baker, who's involved with it on a daily basis and has been for years, right?
Correct. It's a mess.
Right. Okay. If you want to, then the last from Mr. Fiedleday, the idea of shooting range and zoning being able to handle it, and that we were barging ahead, and that there was a secret meeting.
You put it online, correct?
He was reading from the article that we published, and so I mean, if that's one of those things where it's hard to understand because it got to him, and so he was reading from it.
Bruce, you were there. How did you guys know about it?
One from the previous trustee meeting.
That was
Circle and from some other.
So it's been published on several different.
Yeah. So.
Okay.
And I just want to. Yeah. So Bruce said that he received. It was mentioned at the previous trustee meeting, and he got several circle announcements. From what I understand, and this has been something that's been. You and I have discussed on them multiple times. There's not a vote that a Colerain Township trustee can make. There's not a decision that a Colerain Township bureaucrat can make. Is that correct?
I don't believe so. I mean, I don't know what Bernie is referring to. I don't.
So I mean, in my comment, I'll talk about my comment when at the meeting when we get to that.
Bruce was very informative and at the meeting also.
Why don't you come up here if you're going to elaborate on the meeting?
Okay. Yeah, it was as well announced that meeting on February 22nd as anything is. It was announced several times on Circle, and so somebody wanted to show up. In fact, the half a dozen of us who actually showed up, and Chris or somebody else may want to comment, that we were surprised that so few people showed up. I have a number of interests in this whole subject as a firearms instructor, as a person that's been around ranges and other things. And far as the noise ordinance that Bernie was trying to allude to, that was brought up, I can't remember how many years ago, when Dan Malloy was still the administrator. As far as, can you control noise from gun ranges, personal ranges, et cetera. And I believe where it stood was, yes, the current noise ordinance would stand. And I believe it was like, if there was people complained, 85 decibels at the property line. So something measurable. And most of the time, you're not going to get above 85 decibels from a firing range if you're off property. You can hear it? Yes. Is it going to get into the ranges you're going to worry about hearing problems? No. So, local township discussions of personal ranges, dog and game or Fairfield or others was discussed, and I can't remember how long did Dan retire from? I mean, and you took over.
2018.
18, so it was before 18.
Okay. Thank you. Yes. Please hit the microphone.
Please follow your policy and procedures. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right,
Very good.
now to the essence of your report.
Great. Thanks so much. We had another fantastic month in the township. I I think I want to tease this a little bit. We received some really good news about the future of Colerain Park, and there's more to come there. Not quite ready for an announcement yet, but that park will continue to be fantastic and get even better. We've had a great deal of effort put into, operationalizing the changes to the zoning commission that have occurred, and we talked about the donation bins, we talked about food trucks, and all those things are coming online. So lots of great work, and I think we can highlight some more of that by getting into the departmental reports. We'll start with the fire department and Chief Walsh.
But, yes, Chief Walsh. I didn't see you back there, Chief.
Hanging out in the back having
There you go.
conversation.
Hello.
Good evening to the board, those of you in attendance and those watching. For February, in respect to emergency incident activity, we had 726 EMS incidents. We had 129 fire incidents. We made 42 responses into the Springfield Township EMS contract area. We had 3 significant building fires. The 3300 block of Sullivan Court, we had a $150,000 loss. And you probably go, wow, $150,000 loss. And yes, that's significant, but some factors here. A 3-minute and 22 response time, 3 minutes and 22. Sending an effective response force, getting water on that fire quickly, we saved over half of that house. And so, it points to fire station locations, quick response times, sending the right amount of people, and getting water on that fire quickly. The 8900 block of Cheviot Road, we had a $75,000 loss. And the 2500 block of Gazelle Court, we had a $20,000 loss. Our property value lost for the month was $248,600, but we saved $716,540. Our average response time for the first unit was 5 minutes and 31 seconds, and our first unit on the scene, less than 6 minutes, was 64.6%. And that's my February report.
Any questions, comments?
No, the one on Cheviot Road was a little bit troubling, but I'm sure there's factors in that you probably can't discuss.
That's correct. There is a sign in the front yard that addresses that.
It says arson, so people know what it says, and hopefully you were able to get some resolution with that.
It'll only be a matter of time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job, thank you.
Thank you.
Chief?
I heard somebody talk about a BMW for anybody retiring.
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
that a policy we're looking at? Okay.
I guess you're the richest.
In the month of February, officers responded to 3,273 calls for service. The average response time to emergency calls was slightly over 2 minutes. Officers made 95 traffic stops and 10 DUI arrests. We had 140 physical arrests with 3 uses of force and 1 pursuit. And code enforcement and property maintenance, we had 101 violations and 4 housing court referrals. And just in closing, I want to take a second to call out the first responders on the crash on Friday. That was, it's odd to say you're proud of something like that, but to stand back and watch how they worked as a team together was incredible. We really do have the best emergency services people in this township, and that was a terrible, terrible scene. They handled it with class and dignity, and I think that's going to go a long way to bringing the person to justice who was involved in this.
I don't think people realize even the PSTD that your officers experienced after you had said to me that was one of the most horrific scenes, same with the fire department, and how just how average human being would react to seeing that kind of devastation. So I commemorate your state.
And just for people that, I saw it on the news and all that, and just for people that don't know, can you spend 15 seconds saying what happened?
Yeah, without getting into a lot of detail because it is an open prosecution, so I don't want to get into a lot of the details, but the suspect was driving anywhere from 70 to 90 miles an hour south or northbound on Colerain Avenue, disregarded the light and struck the victim as they were coming from Commons Drive to take a left onto Colerain Avenue. And the driver was killed immediately on scene, and the passenger is still recovering. It's still in the hospital.
Well, thank you for your response to
It is currently someone is in custody, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we were able to catch him within about 3 minutes of the crash.
Wow. It's been, and I don't think we've met since mid-February, but the abandoned child, the investigation was I mean, it was just spot on professional. I mean, I don't know how many people that don't follow government and don't follow Colerain have asked me questions about that, and it's one of the most heart-wrenching things you've ever seen or heard about, and I thank you guys. I always say guys, the men and women of the police department and fire and EMS for all that they do, but especially when it involves children.
What's interesting about that is where a lot of our arrests and the good work we do starts with our residents. That started with a resident who cared enough to pull over and make sure that child was safe.
Yeah.
And allow us to get the information to move forward from there. So it's teamwork. It certainly is, and that includes the residents.
Thank you. Any other? Nope.
Very good. Next, we have Mr. Weckbach presenting the Public Services Administrative Report.
Hello again, Board. So something you'll see on this first report here, which is newer, but not at the same time. So we've been doing this externally on different reports, as you'll see this little on track or above or below. And it's just a way for us to say internally and externally how we're benchmarking and where we think we are compared to where we want to be. Park visitorship is something that we try to make sure that it's growing over a 3-year average, and the goal is always to do better than the year before. So we're on track because we are better than the 3-year average, but we're not quite where we want to be. And I think the March numbers, especially with the weather that we saw this past weekend, are really going to start to change some of these around. So that's where that is. The next section is newer. That's around work hours in the Public Services Department as a whole. You'll see we spent a lot of time out plowing in the month of February, which also meant we spent a lot of time getting the vehicles prepped, washing down the vehicles after the fact, because we take pride in keeping our vehicles for as long as possible, which means in order to prevent rust, we got to get all the salt off of those beds. So, and the crew did a tremendous job, I think, in handling that massive storm that came through in the middle of February. So I want to give a shout out to all of them. Some of those guys, they pulled a 16-hour shift. They got 6 to 8 hours off, and then they were back for another 16. So they put in a ton of time working that storm. A couple other notes that I wanted to call out here is trash cans. So we signed a contract with Rumpke for some collection along Colerain Avenue. We were lucky enough to have a break in the weather last week, and so we got a number of those pads poured and out there, and the cans are out there on the corridor. It's not all of them, because we do have a few spots where we're hoping to install benches as well. So that's a bigger concrete pad, so we're waiting to make sure that we get the equipment in to do that, but it's an exciting first step on that endeavor. Another item of note that I stress to everyone that we meet, and I hope you all do as well, is that we're hiring for seasonals and summer camp employees. We're not going to pay as much as some of these fast food restaurants and other places are these days, but it's a fun job. You get to be out in the environment and really enjoy the summer atmosphere. So if you know of anybody, please encourage them to apply, and encourage that goes for anybody who's watching as well. So, and then finally, I wanted to call out and highlight Jeff Payne, one of our employees in the Parks Department. He's done a ton of work working with the Nepalese community on the cricket field down at Dravo Park. They went as far as to honor him and congratulate him and celebrate him for the successful season they were able to have, due in large part to the way that he's maintained the field there. So I wanted to pass that along and also call out his work, because I do think it's an incredible display of community pride, and it's really helpful for us to bond with everyone that we work with and encounter on a daily basis. And with that, I'll conclude my report.
Thank you, Mr. Weckbach.
Sure. Any questions?
No, thank you.
Right.
And I called about a stop sign that somebody alerted me to, and I drove by today, and it was up in less than a week. And actually, you put another one up that I guess that was bad too. I just, compared to the other one, I thought, well, that's pretty good. But thank you for the quick response on that.
Thank you, Mr. Weckbach. Next, we have Mr. Miller giving the Development Department report.
Mr. Miller?
Start with going back last month.
Microphone.
Mike.
There you go.
How did I get it? Who turned it on?
It's a little initiation routine here.
Yeah, that's what it is. Reaching back to February, where we passed the text amendments, and it's been mentioned already, we've had some meetings already to develop policy and procedure and SOPs for the donation bins, and so we're getting close to that enforcement date on both of those, and we have a work session planned as well for the food trucks to develop that. So those are coming together, and again, thank you, Ms. Wright, for your offer to help with those locations, and your list will supplement what we have, and I think we'll have a comprehensive look at how to maintain a good, clean community with those new resolutions. And then something that Mr. Weckbach said was, he mentioned that I'll kind of come in behind that with where are we now and where do we want to be and how are we going to get there. So in 2021, the township produced a fantastic comprehensive plan, covered every issue that affects the government, affects the citizens in our community, and it's known as Imagine Colerain. And so, of course, the most important part of the plan was the part that addresses economic development. And so I have made a copy for each of you.
Oh, it's in color, too.
So this is your homework, and what I would like to propose in an effort to discuss, as the economy changes, we know it's always changing, right? And so has our board. Certainly the economic development staff for the township has changed significantly since the comprehensive plan was completed. And so what I would like to propose would be a work session in April with the board on April 26th. Oh, is that the right date? I believe it was. April 26th, right, during the board's organizational meeting. And so I'd like to encourage you to look at this section of the comprehensive plan. And it really summarizes well, I believe, where we are economically. But what I want to do is just be certain that where we are now is where we are headed and how we're going to get there. And so I want to know what your priorities are as we move forward so that the development staff can implement those plans. So I hope that plan will work out. So we'll move that direction if that is acceptable to the board. A couple other mentionables from the Development Department. I'm happy to report that our zoning administrator, Jared Alleg, at the recent BZA and the board, they guided Ryan Holmes through the February 23rd meeting for the approval of 92 new homes to be built on the old Beavis School site. So those are going to be very nice. I guess they're triplexes. And so we're adding that to the 66 homes across the street at Dunlap Grove. And then D.R. Horton is building 51 at Crosley Meadows, where we had 6 applications that were approved for zoning certificates. And those construction on those are going to start very soon. So there's a lot of future homes that are being built, and we're going to have new residents in Colerain. So that is all that I have on my report on economic development. If you have any questions, happy to address those.
Thank you, Mr. Miller.
Thank you.
Sir. Great, that concludes the administrative reports.
Great. Trustee reports.
I'll go first. Mine is short. In response to the question about what did I learn throughout not just the meeting on February 22nd about the firearms range, but what I've learned about it during the time it's been discussed. It's going to be a vastly upgraded facility from what is in Lincoln Heights. As a young person, I was taken out to Lincoln Heights, and our Cub Scout group took target practice out there, and so I was exposed to that at a very early age. I think firearms training, and especially safety, is critical for for people of any age. Know what you're doing. Do not handle a firearm if you don't know what you're doing, and be proficient in the use of a firearm if you're going to have one. It's a county project, and the county is going to do what they are going to do with the gun range. Much the same way, if ODOT wanted to do something on I-275, we don't really have any control over that either. We can certainly talk to ODOT, but ultimately they're going to do what they're going to do. Part of what the folks that were down at the, or next door at the meeting on February 22nd, was quite a collection of people. All three county commissioners were there, the sheriff was there, policemen from several different agencies were there, Chief Denny and Assistant Chief Cordy were there, and the citizens that showed up were there, and we all sat at different tables and just listened to the presentation, and I thought it was quite interesting. As Mr. Wallert likes to say, the long non-history of the city and county cooperating on Payne for something, it's probably not going to happen tomorrow, but it was a very interesting presentation, and there were some draft drawings that were put together from it, and I thought that was interesting. And yeah, the business last Friday on Colerain Avenue, that did not go well at all for anybody, and it's a disaster. And as Mr. Wallert said, the people have spoken. They've put the judges in that are in there, and they just seem to be letting a lot of folks out that shouldn't be out running around, and that's kind of how stuff like that doesn't happen overnight. Obviously, that guy had a lot of issues previous in life to when he did this terrible thing the other day. The policy on food and drinks and coffee was on the January 4th organizational meeting agenda, and the reason we had that was because the state auditor recommended that we adopt a policy for such things. I still get plenty of phone calls at 513-404-3057, and I got one yesterday about a broken down vehicle that's parked over on Lapland that was leaking a lot of oil. I did communicate that to Mr. Mills, and apparently you had somebody out there today to tag it, because I heard back from that resident, and they appreciate how quick you got somebody out there. And I'll yield the balance of my time to the other two trustees.
I was impressed with the presentation, Hamilton County, with the, sorry about this, the person who ran the meeting diligently asked everybody the questions that they were concerned with. I didn't hear, I know we got there late, I didn't hear anything about a bomb. Was I facility there, what Mr. Fidley was talking about?
Yeah, I think there is some kind of shelter or something shown on the drawing.
Okay,
Yeah.
I guess we missed that part of it. But the Hamilton County police officers were there saying they're there 3 days a week anyway, and as Bruce had said, the baffling system and everything is going to be much better than it was, because that was some of the concerns about the sound decibel and how far it's going to travel and the traffic. And when you talk about 16 lanes, it's not there. You're not going to have that many people there every hour, because they're there probably for an hour and a half to 2 hours. So they eliminated the traffic concerns a lot, and they're doing what they can to even make the sound barriers much better than what it is now. That's what I got out of the meeting.
Is that your
That's
report?
good, yeah.
Okay. I got contacted actually through Ms. Wright, through another citizen, with regard to putting handicap signs on the street, and that's covered in our policy book. Part of the issue, and I'm more than happy to look at anything that's in the policy book and reconsider it. Part of the issue is that, and I've got the numbers coming from our Ohio Driver's License Bureau with Mr. Norman, who runs that, to get the number of people that do have handicap permits in Colerain Township. The problem is there are going to be certain places that'll be squeezed, and that we won't be able to give everybody one, and that's kind of the reason we have it written in the policy. Then who decides who gets one and who doesn't get one, and now we're treating one resident different than another. And then what happens if they move? Now we have an entire bureaucratic policy in place, but I'm going to get those numbers to look at it and see if it's something to look at again. With regard to the community conversation, which was sponsored by the county, and I kind of put it very bluntly, because you had 2 federal representatives there, you had state representatives, you had City of Cincinnati representatives, and you had Hamilton County representatives, and they're like, any questions? The trustees are here. And I'm like, I'm here to get as much as I can out of all you guys for Colerain Township. And it's interesting, because I thought that would maybe turn some noses upside down. And I had 3 people from that contact me and say, oh my gosh, I love that approach. We're gonna, and I've got some insight that's gonna help. But it's a county decision, but they've said if we're against it, they're not gonna do it. So, and I don't think there's any way that we can stop it other than people contacting the county. It doesn't do any good for the 3 of us to contact, but if you're against it, contact the county. And if there's enough people that are against it, they're over and over, and I take them at their word. The county has said, we're not going to go, we're not wanted in this county and the city. It's not a matter of us banging ahead with it and working. I mean, yeah, I mean, I would like to not have it, but if they're going to be able to do it, I'm going to try to maximize what we can get out of it. And I had some discussions with a couple of the Cincinnati Police Department that gave us an idea of how to maximize that, because, quite frankly, they want a better place too. And I will share this with Mr. Mills afterward, but I will say in terms of full disclosure here, I know the person, but I'll let you talk to him. He's an Elder grad, and I've seen him at Elder events, but there's a guy named Ben Clare. Ben Clare has iliterate.com, and I just talked to Pete Whitty from Price Hill Will, and they hired him. He has a company that picks up trash, and he picked up 90 gallons of trash on Sunday. Now, the issue with this is, and the issue that I'm becoming more and more cognizant of, we're not changing anyone's behavior by picking up after them. And in fact, it very well could be construed that we're encouraging that behavior. So, as we move forward with the clean up, and things like that, we need to really encourage people that we don't want your trash. Don't dump it here, and don't throw it out your window. And some of the stuff I found out is incredible. I would have never guessed. Like cigarette butts, I thought were not really all that big a deal, but they take like, I don't know, like the half-life of a dinosaur to like
100
break.
years to even biodegrade.
What's that?
It was over 100 years to biodegrade.
Yeah, I was like, wow, that's something.
Clean up an intersection. That's just,
And I've become so, and I think it's part of citizen driven. I've become so cognizant of it that wherever I look, I'm like, all right, how trashy is this? How much trash is there? And believe me, Mr. Miller will tell you, being formerly with the city of Cincinnati, driving up Grand Avenue every morning to work and across Glenway, wow. But I went south 2 weeks ago, and I'm driving through the state of Tennessee, and Georgia was kind of some litter, but Tennessee and Florida, there's nothing. Not even by the highway. So we can't keep paying to mitigate this problem when people aren't changing behaviors. And that's kind of the next step to this is to get people, I think Dan has said before, change what's in people's heart. Don't litter your place. I mean, I just don't get it. I mean, but so that said, I'll give you Ben's info, and maybe he's somebody work with it, maybe not, but I know who he is, so I won't be involved in this at all, and that's why I wanted to be upfront about it. Other than that, I think that's all I have for now, till we get to new business.
Very good. Thank you, sir. The first items of new business are in our public safety departments, and specifically, actually, all of these items are in the police department. Chief Denny?
Chief?
First item is recommend adoption of a motion to issue a noise resolution permit for Club Trio. They request an outdoor permit from May 1st, 2022 till October 31st, 2022. And they also, and Mr. Solomon, I'll refer to you on this, there's 3 requests in this one resolution. Do they need to be separated? They are. Okay.
Each one.
There's 3 separate. Okay. So the So the first is the blanket permit from May 1st, 2022 till October 31st, 2022.
Motion that we approve the blanket permit as described by Chief Denny.
I second.
Having heard a motion and a duly made second motion, second, are there any questions, concerns, comments with regard?
I think they're banned. They're for bands, outside bands.
Okay.
Did we have any complaints last year when we did this?
No, we didn't.
No.
Okay. No other questions from me.
All right, Mr. Baker, call the question.
Ms. Ulrich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes.
Second is recommend adoption of a motion to issue a noise permit to Club Trio for March 12th, 2022. It's an 8-hour permit.
I motion that we approve the permit for March 12th, 2022 for that specific event.
I'll second.
All right, having a motion in a second, any questions, comments, concerns? All right, Mr. Baker?
Ms. Ulrich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes.
The third of those is a recommended adoption of a motion to issue a noise resolution permit to Club Trio for March 17th, 2022. It's an 8-hour permit.
I motion that we approve the permit for March 17th, St. Patrick's Day, 2022
I
for
second.
Club Trio.
I second.
All right, any comments?
Drive by on that day and see how it's going.
We may be busy that day. that's for
I'll be home that day, thank you. No other comments.
All right, Mr. Baker?
Ms. Ulrich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes.
Next is recommend adoption of a resolution declaring a junk motor vehicle. Recommend adoption of the motion to declare and order abatement of the junk motor vehicle at the following property: 2336 Lincoln Avenue, parcel ID 5100031 0519-00. It's a white Pontiac Sunfire, Ohio registration EJY 6075, and a teal Kia Rio, Ohio registration HGR 5670.
I motion that we approve the resolution declaring the vehicles located at 2336 Lincoln Avenue, 45231, as described by Chief Denny.
I'll second that. Any comments, questions?
None.
Mr. Baker?
Ms. Ulrich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes.
So I recommend adoption of a motion to declare a junk motor vehicle recommend adoption of the motion to declare and order abatement of a junk motor vehicle at the following property: 3217 McGill Lane, parcel ID 5100093 0083-00. It's a red Chrysler PT Cruiser, no plates, and a dark blue Dodge Caravan with no plates.
I'll motion to recommend the adoption of a motion to declare and order abatement of the junk motor vehicle at the following property: 3217 McGill Lane, Cincinnati, Ohio 45251, parcel ID 5100093 a red Chrysler PT Cruiser, no plates, and a dark blue Dodge Caravan, no plates.
I will second it.
Discussion?
We have gotten rid of a lot of junk motor vehicles in the past year since we've started this, and I think it's had a huge impact for the township.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's been a significant movement.
No other comments from me.
All right, Mr. Baker?
Ms. Ulrich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes.
Recommend adoption of a resolution declaring a junk motor vehicle and ordering abatement of the junk motor vehicle at the following property: 7954 Harrison Avenue, parcel ID 51000400068, a red Ford Taurus, no license plate.
I'll motion to recommend the adoption of the motion to declare and order abatement of the junk motor vehicle at the following property: 7954 Harrison Avenue, Cincinnati, Ohio 45002, parcel ID 51004400068. It's a red Ford Taurus, year unavailable, no plates.
I second.
Discussion?
None.
Mr. Baker?
Ms. Ulrich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes.
Recommend adoption of a resolution allowing for the removal of uncontrolled vegetation and/or refuse at the following properties: 2870 Burnside, 9871 Capstan, 8240 Pippin, 3713 Pool, and the property number, the parcel numbers are included in the resolution. And all those properties will be abated by the township and have their property taxes assessed.
I motion that we approve the resolution declaring nuisance and ordering abatement at the properties as described by Chief Denny.
I'll second that.
No comments.
No comments? No discussion? Mr. Baker?
Ms. Ulrich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes.
Next item is recommend adoption of a motion to authorize the township administrator to purchase an anhydrous fingerprint processing chamber. This item, I was asked to kind of give a little detail on what this is. An anhydrous chamber will process fingerprints on items that we cannot dust for fingerprints, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So sometimes you'll have clothing or other porous materials that a fingerprint powder dust just doesn't work. The anhydrous is a chemical that binds to amino acids and moisture in a fingerprint and can process them on things that we can't get them anywhere else. So on checks, sometimes paper documents, just anything. And this chamber allows us to control the humidity and the temperature and to get the proper response from the chemical reaction. It also protects the officers with an exhaust system. So the cost of the chamber is $19,994.83, and it was included in our final appropriations in our budget.
I'll motion to authorize the township administrator to purchase a anhydrous, is that right?
Anhydrous.
Anhydrous fingerprint processing chamber.
I'll second.
Chief, I don't know if you checked into this, but on Beverly Hills Cop, what they do is they get a match cover and some super glue.
We actually have that, I can't think of the name of it offhand, but we have the chamber for that. We do that as well.
All right.
Does this replace an existing piece of equipment, or is this a new technology
This is
that?
new technology for us.
It's been on CSI.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I know it's hard to top the incredibly cogent remark I made, but are there any other discussions?
Cyanoacrylate, that's what it's called.
All right, call for a vote, please.
Ms. Ulrich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes.
Final item is recommend adoption of a motion to authorize the township administrator to execute a purchase agreement with Axon Enterprise Incorporated for additional body cameras, with your approval to hire 5 additional officers and cycle some of our older cameras out and add to our school safety officers. There's a need for additional cameras, licenses, and storage space. So the total on that is $22,646.50. I believe that we talked about how we could pay half of that in this fiscal year, and then we can do the other $11,000 next year.
And that shows on here at 11,323.25 year one and the same amount in year two.
Yes.
I'll motion to authorize Township Administrator to execute a purchase agreement with Axon Enterprises for additional body cameras.
I'll second.
Chief, and I've seen this, I've seen probably 5 different body cam footages in the last week from different jurisdictions. Is Axon the only one?
They're by far the forerunner. And
Okay, because every one of them was Axon.
When these first started, we did a lot of research. We actually tried 5 or 6 different companies. Everybody threw their hat in the ring. Axon has survived.
Okay.
And kind of eaten up the smaller competition, and they are by far they make the taser as well. So they're a public safety company. So we by getting tasers and body cameras, we do save a lot of money by making that a package.
Okay, good. Any other comments, questions?
None.
Mr. Baker?
Ms. Ulrich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes.
Thank you, Board.
Thank you, Chief.
Thanks, Chief.
Mr. Waller, the next items are in our Public Services Division and will be presented by Mr. Jeff Weckbach.
All right, Mr. Weckbach, let's talk some road mileage.
Yes, so recommend adoption of a motion accepting the 2021 road mileage certification. So annually we have to do this for ODOT. For last year, the county certified to us that we are 115.572 miles.
All right, I will motion to accept the 2021 road mileage certification is provided by Mr. Eric Beck, County Engineer.
I'll second it.
So this is all done with they did it.
Okay.
The county engineer measured this out. Yeah.
Yes.
So we're just confirming that. Mr. Baker?
Ms. Ulrich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes.
Thank you, Board. And I know they're itching for that, so I'll take that from you guys as soon as you're done signing. But the next item is a motion to issue a request for quotes for HVAC control upgrades at the administration building. So I'm sure some of you have recognized during different trustee meetings, it may get a little hot in here, it may get a little cold in here. The HVA system is 20 plus years old at this point. It's reaching the end of its useful life, and some of the issues that we're dealing with are the control system talking to the chillers that we have in place. So we were working with our facility manager to identify 3 potential solutions that we could use to go forward. One would be to completely gut the chiller, the controls, everything all at once, by a proprietary system and move forward with that. Another one would be to try to make small tweaks around the edges. So that'd be changing out the individual controllers and VAV boxes in the different areas. And the other option would actually be to go out to bid and see what kind of quotes we could get back to upgrade the controls at our system. So that is kind of the middle ground option. We really aren't 100% sure what those prices are going to come in at. And so when they do come in, we're going to meet and work with the facility manager to really figure out if this is something that makes sense for the township or if it's something that needs to be put on hold and worked into a future budget. So with this document, we would just be posting the request for quotes and be bringing forward items for future consideration.
Any motions at this time?
I motion that we put out the request for quotations described by Jeff Weckbach.
I'll second.
Discussion?
Yes, we really need to avoid getting too married to a proprietary system. I think part of the problem is the vendor that you can never stop. Once they get a hold of your system, it's really hard to get any other equipment in there. I didn't say their name, but I just got halfway through their advertising slogan. So I'll be interested to see how these prices come back.
Sure.
And this is prices and presumably different solutions too.
Yeah, and so as part of the request for quotes, I think we put in there that if they're going to quote us on some of the other upgrades to VAV boxes as well, that we would like to see that so that we could have a good idea of what it would cost to replace those, because what we have been doing is replacing those as they break. 4 years ago, it wasn't something that was happening, and last year I think we had to replace at least 2 or 3 in police, and this year there are more that I'm sure are going to break, and that's just, we're getting into that 20 to 25 year range where this happens.
Right. Any other questions, comments, concerns?
No.
Mr. Baker?
Ms. Ulrich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes.
Thank you, Board.
Mr. Waller, Board of Trustees, the next items are in our Development Department and will be presented by Mr. David Miller.
Mr. Miller, you've got quite a list here.
You didn't turn the mic off on me. All right, under Section 10 for new business, the development section, the first item we have is item A, resolution imposing a 1-year moratorium on new establishments that primarily sell or distribute electronic smoking devices and or vapor products within Colerain Township. The rationale is that there's been an increase in the number of vaping stores that have opened in Colerain Township in recent years, and the proposal is to extend the existing moratorium on any new vaping establishments as well as additions to existing vape shops for 1 year. And the moratorium will provide time to allow the Township and Board of Trustees to review pertinent state and federal legal codes that pertain to these sales, as well as to consider any reasonable regulations on these businesses, and recommend the adoption of the resolution.
A motion to impose a 1-year moratorium on the new establishments that primarily sell or distribute electronic smoking devices and or vapor products within Colerain Township.
I'll second.
Discussion.
How many approximately stores do we have right now?
That's a good question. I would say a half dozen.
So we have a,
Just primarily vape and
okay,
smoking
but there
devices.
are other facilities that do sell vaping items. So nobody's going to be out without a loss with this moratorium.
Right. It's just if somebody comes in for a zoning certificate for a new one,
Right.
then
Okay.
there's a moratorium.
And expansion.
Right.
I think when we discussed this a year ago, my concern was you can still buy these products at places like UDF and Kroger's and everywhere else. And I just didn't think it was fair to single out that one. If we were getting rid of them totally, that'd be one thing, but we're singling out those particular businesses that want to start up new, which kind of secures the market for those people that already sell them. I think the products are terrible. Any young person or any person, I would strongly advise you not to use them, but they do exist, and that'll be reflected in my vote. I just don't think it's right to corner the market for, Kroger and UDF and others when it kind of boxes out the small guy. And like I said, please don't use those products. That's my opinion. I'm not a doctor, but I just think it's the road to nowhere. But I'm looking at it as a general rule of fairness when some people have the products and some people don't. So.
This is something I first brought, I guess, over a year ago. I think that there tends to be a nuisance in these, I guess I put them on the same level with cash advance, which I believe we also have a moratorium on as well. And if we want to grow development, we don't want to grow development around certain types of businesses. I think we have a compelling interest for these to be frozen as to where they're at, especially for just a one-year period. Other question? Any comments? Mr. Baker?
Ms. Ulrich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
No.
Mr. Waller?
Yes.
All right, thank you very much. Now, the next items on the agenda are items B through H. They are resolutions for demolition of 7 properties. So similar to the 2012 and 23 State of Ohio program called Moving Ohio Forward, Colerain Township is again hoping to partner with the state to identify vacant and unsafe and insecure properties which are negatively impacting our community. Eventually, after all of the public notices and hearings and opportunities for input, appeals, due process, everything that is granted to a private property owner, we hope to be able to remove these blighted properties and to make way for something that's much better for those who live nearby and for our community at large. The resolutions before you tonight are only the first step in a detailed and a very careful process that's laid out in the Ohio Revised Code, and that will include a public hearing that's planned for May 10th, and then a final demolition resolution on June 14th. So that's the schedule at this point. The board has identified 7 initial resolutions that are before you for the following addresses: 9929 Capstan Drive, 7954 Harrison Avenue, 9970 Hollis Drive, 2864 Houston Road, 8806 Nabita Drive, 3483 Niagara Street, and 3484 Niagara Street. We recommend adoption of the first resolution for 9929 Capstan Drive.
I motion that we approve the resolution for the demolition of the property at 9929 Capstan Drive.
I'll second that. Discussion.
Place is a mess. I was over there helping clean it up 3 years ago. Water hasn't been paid since 2017. It's boarded up and somebody keeps getting into it.
Yep. I was there.
Thank you for going after that one.
Neighbors will be happy to get rid of that. Talk about a dumping ground.
Mr. Baker?
Can I make one comment before we take the vote?
Yeah.
Just to be clear, all of these properties, we are anticipating receiving a state grant for demolition, whereby we would pay about 20%, they would pay 80%. If we don't get the grant, we'll have to reevaluate our ability to do these, but the process is so long and arduous that we wanted to go through the process with the hopes that by the time we get done, we'll have that grant in hand. So I just want to say, if we don't get the grant, we may not be demolishing all these properties. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ms. Ulrich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes.
Next item, we recommend the adoption of the resolution for 7954 Harrison Avenue.
I motion that we approve the resolution for demolition of the property at 7954 Harrison Avenue.
I'll second that.
I noticed we just approved towing a car off that property also, so we're heading down the right road.
Yep, and there will be a trash abatement here before long also.
No other comments?
Mr. Baker?
Ms. Ulrich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes.
Next item, we recommend adoption of the resolution for demolition for 9970 Hollis Drive.
I motion that we approve the resolution for demolition of the property at 9970 Hollis Drive.
I'll second that.
The neighbor across the street from there has been incredibly patient. The building envelope is perforated, the soffit is missing. It needs to come down as soon as we can get to it.
Any other discussion?
No.
All right, Mr. Baker?
Ms. Ulrich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes.
Next item, we would recommend the adoption of the resolution for demolition of 2864 Houston Road.
I'm going to motion to demolish the property 2864 Houston Road.
I'll second.
No comments.
None. I mean, it's just, I think it's great that we're getting, that we'll have grant money to get rid of these, and I think that puts some neighbors' thoughts at ease, and not only are they a magnet for a lot of times trash and dumping, but crime and things that we don't want.
Vermin.
Mr. Baker?
I apologize, Board. What was the motions and second on that?
Waller and Ulrich.
Ms. Ulrich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes.
Next item, we recommend adoption of the resolution for demolition of 8806 Nabita Drive.
I motion that we approve the resolution for demolition of the property at 8806 Nabita Drive.
I'll second that.
No comments from me.
It's pretty much ditto, same thing. I think as we said before, let's get it going, man. Mr. Baker?
Ms. Ulrich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes.
Next item would be the adoption of a resolution for demolition of 3483 Niagara Street.
I motion that we approve the resolution for demolition of the property at 3483 Niagara.
I'll second that.
One of those, either that one or the one next to it's a burnout.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
It's kind of been pretty charred up for a while. No other comments.
All right, Mr. Baker?
Ms. Ulrich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes.
And the last resolution in this section, we recommend adoption for demolition of 3484 Niagara Street.
I'll motion for the demolition of the property at 3484 Niagara Street.
I'll second it. Hopefully they can do the two together.
Wouldn't that be-
Right across the street from each other.
You know, I've looked at every one of these except the one on Houston Road. And
I've passed it on
they're all a
Houston.
mess. So, no other comments.
Mr. Baker?
Ms. Ulrich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes.
I would be remiss to say that if we can get through with this batch, I think it would bode well for our previous meeting, which was the CIC. Maybe these houses, these lots would eventually become a new build and a new home for families to live in Colerain. And it would, I'm certainly certain that the residents on that street in Colerain would appreciate it. Thank you for your support.
Fantastic. Thank you, sir.
You're 8 for 8, Mr. Miller. Outstanding work. Next items are in administration. I'll handle those. First is a motion authorizing Township Administrator to execute a contract with Dunrobin Associates, LLC, for right-of-way consulting services. This is in relation to the Colerain Avenue Streetscape project that is inching ever closer to its expected construction date in 2023. It's time to begin to acquire the necessary right-of-way to construct the project. Most of this right-of-way is going to be temporary right-of-way. There's one little piece of permanent right-of-way that needs to be acquired to make the project go, and that is why we hire a professional service provider who specializes in buying right-of-way and negotiating all those easements. So Dunrobin Associates presented the lowest and best proposal, and it's Recommendation that we adopt this motion.
I motion that we authorize the Township Administrator to execute a contract with Dunrob and Associates for right-of-way consulting services.
I'll second that.
Is this for all the sidewalks and up and down, the expansion of the sidewalks up and down Colerain, correct?
This is from Shady Crest to John Rose.
Right.
Yep, in Groesbeck. And so this will be the streetscape project that will expand that sidewalk and add the pedestrian scale lighting and the landscaping and the knee wall and all the.
I just want to get the,
Yep.
let the public know what's.
Got it.
what's
All right, we have a motion and a second. Mr. Baker?
Ms. Orch?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes.
Thank you, Board. The next item is a resolution adopting the 2022 permanent appropriations. Mr. McElravy, would you like to present this one?
Excuse me. Evening.
Good evening.
So the resolution before you would set permanent appropriations for 2022, the last step in the budget process. The amount for permanent appropriations is a 2.5% or $1,006,000 increase over temporary appropriations for a total amount of $40,921,320.05. And the highlights of those changes are as follows. An increase in appropriations of $580,000 in the funds that support the road program. This is the 2021 road program, and this would align appropriations with the amount of the contract in combination with a carryover purchase order from 2021. An increase in $34,000 in Fund 2904, which is the Duke TIF. And this is an estimate in anticipation of needing to make our payment to the Northwest Local School District as part of the typical arrangement that the township has with these TIF projects. An increase in $45,000 in the general fund. Much like the first item, this is carrying forward a project from 2021 and aligning the appropriations with the contracted amount. This is for our branding initiative. Next thing is an increase in appropriations for $50,000, and this is for the 275 Gateway Streetscape project. And then finally, or not finally, actually, second to last, penultimate, I guess, is an increase in $201,000 in the police fund that allows us to book the escrow lease payments that we make through Huntington Bank. So the way that the escrow system is set up is that we have an arrangement with Huntington Bank where they go ahead and fund an escrow in order to be able to pay in its entirety the cost to make regular improvements to our police fleet. And then what happens is that basically serves as a loan to the township, and then those vehicles are paid off over a 5-year term. So what this does is, since we now have to recognize these Huntington transactions that are controlled by Huntington under a escrow agreement that we have with them, nonetheless, we need to show this on our books. So this takes care of the appropriation side of that equation. So it's an increase in $201,000 for that. And then finally, topic of great deal of discussion this evening and kind of out in the world writ large. There are increases in fuel prices for both the police fund and the fire fund, consistent with estimates that are provided by the U.S. Department of Energy. So the staff recommendation is adoption of the resolution.
I motion we adopt the resolution of permanent appropriations for the year 2022.
I'll second.
Discussion.
Thank you for your work on the project. I realize there's a lot of factors in play, including the rampant inflation that has come to visit us over the last few months. Starting before what happened in February, it's been there's just a lot going on here. So
Thank you. There are many hands involved in putting this together. All the department heads, supported by a lot of folks in the departments, and also, of course, Mr. Weckbach, who does the lion's share of the work on our budgeting. So just want to share that.
Yes, he does. Jeff does a lot of the back work for this stuff. I know that. Jeff Weckbach does.
He's got solar energy.
I don't know about that, but
any other comments?
none from me.
All right, Mr. Baker?
Ms. Orich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes.
Thank you, Board.
Thank you, Mr. McAravey. Mr. Waller, the next item is a item to address the compensation of the Assistant Township Administrator.
Sure, and I'd like to talk about that a little bit. That's right, Mr. McElravy. Jeff Weckbach does an awful lot of things around here, and a lot of it, our policy book, and so much of that, and so much of the back work that goes into putting together these budgets. And in addition, over the last several months, he has also taken on the challenge of managing the Public Works Department, which wasn't part of what he came here to do, and I think he's done well with that and made some improvements. And you spend a lot of time back up on the hill there, and it's probably made your days longer. And we really appreciate having you around. And I realize that adding that to your scope of things you do has probably been a challenge, and it seems like you've met and exceeded our expectations with it. And so I appreciate all your work up there. Any comments, Matt or Kathy? Or?
I'm going to agree with you. He's always been there to answer all my questions. He provides me with all the information that I've needed, being so new. So I think he's going to be well compensated for that, hopefully.
I just, I mean, he's saved us more money than we could ever imagine by moving over into Public Works temporarily, and in making it so that we don't need to hire somebody just to hire somebody to fill that. I don't know that people realize the incredible cost to onboarding new employees, making an investment in them, in making sure that we have the right person added to that team. And he's, quite frankly, his breadth of competencies runs very, very far. I mean, he's able to do a lot of things, and I think we need to reward good employees as much as we can. We're not going to be able to match everybody on salary, but it's odd because if you look at surveys in industry or government anywhere, compensation is not the number one reason why people stay or go to different jobs. It's simply not. But this is a way for us to stay, I think, competitive.
And that said, you've probably saved us 4 months of salary and benefits for a Public Works Director at this point. And I'm going to go ahead and recommend an amount that certainly won't reflect a third of a Public Works Director's salary, but just some small amount to let you know that the board appreciates that. And I'm going to go ahead and motion that we would increase your compensation by $5,000 for the year, which is about $100 a week over 50 weeks. So I don't know if I can get any agreement on that or a second on that.
I'll second that.
What is the amount you're approving?
5,000.
I think that'll change the compensation from, is it 100, I don't have the note in front of me, 106 to 111? Does that sound about right? Okay, and there is an exact amount, and but that's my motion, and it sounds like it's been seconded, and I just say thanks for all the extra work you're doing up there, and you've proven to be invaluable, and you've saved us a third of a year of paying a Public Works Director, and that's a very small amount compared to what we're saving up there. So,
Mr. Mills, for the record, can we get his current salary? So,
Yep.
do you have that?
Yes, hang on just a second. I was,
Oh, sorry, I should.
see if I can pull that up.
I guess that means you're staying up there, so.
We can get you some electric.
I just need more solar energy.
Well, that is quite a challenge to take on, to be up there and do both your jobs, so it's much appreciated.
Here's a copy of the current salaries.
Jeff has them.
106, 180, $106,180.20.
Okay. So that'll now be $111,180.20, if that motion carries. We have a motion, I've seconded. Any other discussion?
Not from me.
Not for me.
Mr. Baker?
Ms. Orich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes. Next item, we have performance and compensation to Township Administrator. So we did, as I referenced earlier in the meeting, through executive session, which is permitted, we discussed an evaluation of Mr. Mills in the evaluation tool areas that we've set forth, kind of as a vision of what we want out of a township administrator. There are 9 categories. I'm going to go through each category and kind of hit the highlights of. I don't have which trustee put which item down, but we certainly, once we put this document together, it reflected the 3 of us. So strategic plan. The alignment of the organization around the strategic plan is fantastic. It's moving the township in the right direction. Attendance, always available, answering calls from the trustees at all hours. Sorry about that, Mr. Mills. I'm usually the early one. I would guess probably others are a little bit later. Many after-hours meetings on a host of topics, not just obviously the Board of Trustees meetings. Work ethic. The work ethic is fantastic. He works around the clock to improve Colerain. And it's odd. Sometimes he'll send me a text on a Sunday morning and say, "Hey, I saw this and this." I mean, he's actually reading journals about administrative management and stuff, and I'm like, "Oh, let me check this out." So it's fantastic. Customer service. Always respectful, treats the staff as professionals, takes time to work with his staff and is willing to listen to and address their concerns. Excels at working with the residents to address their areas of concern and to be responsive. 60,000 people are a lot of people in order to respond to. Item number 5, achieves extraordinary results. Realignment of code enforcement to the police department. Reorganization of the planning and zoning to function and focus on economic development. Despite COVID, was able to keep the township functioning at all levels. Currently, no general obligation debt. Number 6, builds and leverages relationships, leveraging state funding to cover costs of Fort Colerain. Manages expectations effectively, both internally and externally. Partners with the county to help achieve township goals. Team Up to Green Up Colerain shows the ability to leverage groups and relationships, uniting them in a common cause and goal. Number 7, innovation. Self-insurance for health care and savings to the township as a result of this switch. TIF district creations in 2021 and the long-term financial flexibility this will help provide. Number 8, drives and accepts change. Policy book is continually renewed for updates, which are vetted with the Board of Trustees. Focuses on prioritizing and balancing the requests of the entire Board of Trustees, which works projects into the strategic plan for completion. And number 9, leadership presence, focuses on mentoring and training employees throughout the organization, has respect and support of internal staff at all levels. And that's the finding of our evaluation. And it says draft, but we can provide that to Mr. Baker for his minutes. That said, are there any motions or at this time? Yeah, are there any?
Any discussions?
Well, we need a motion before each. So I motion that we. Do you have his current salary?
132.
What is your current?
132.
I believe so, yeah.
Is it? I think it's even, isn't it? 132 even.
Pretty close. Hang on just a second, let me see. $132,612.50.
Yeah. I'm going to have to do some math here real quick. I'm going to motion to, and this is going to be maybe shocking to some, to bring the salary to 150 even. That will make him commensurate with other jurisdictions. I know that for many is a significant increase, but I'm a firm believer that that we need to keep our leadership in place. Are there any seconds?
I'll second.
And I will get the exact number as soon as I do some addition. Any discussion?
I would comment, one of the things we did discuss is how, I think it's important to the other two trustees, but it's very important to me that we are out of debt, because it makes the operation a lot more flexible. It enables us to handle emergencies better. We went all the way through COVID, and unlike in the private business world that I talk so much about, we didn't have to lay off a single employee, and everybody got paid the whole time. So as far as being out of debt, that last payment we made on the last of our general obligation bonds, I want to say it was right around $970,000, and on that statement, it showed that $18,000 of that was interest. And that $18,000 could have been spent a lot of different ways, but instead we were using it to pay interest on something. So as we move forward and we start talking about the construction of a firehouse or whatever the priorities are of the Board of Trustees, I'm looking to do it within that money that we have that $970 that we're not spending every year now. And I would ask that you don't come up with another plan for it. That's to go to a capital improvement, based on if I can get some agreement from the other trustees. But people say, well, why not bond out something like that and let the people of the future pay for it, because they're the ones that are going to get the most use out of it? To which I say, I think the people of the future are really screwed, and we might as well pay. They are, because there's just so much debt out there that if we have the resources and we can, and I've talked to you about a couple different funding mechanisms where we could pay for this without bonding it out or borrowing money, because the fact of the matter is, if you build a firehouse, and granted the last bids I saw were from another jurisdiction right before COVID started, it was about $3.5 million. Well, if you bond that out, you end up paying back $4.5 million over 30 years. So I just as soon pay for it. That's one of the core functions of the township. So my charge to you, among other things, is figure out how to do that. And then some of the other things we've talked about also. I know Kathy was here tonight from Northgate Mall. Hopefully there's something coming down the road on that sometime soon. And those are the real big priorities for this township. So those are my comments.
My big 68 days in office, didn't have a whole lot to go on from last year for Jeff's evaluation. But what I did do is I did go to the firehouses, the police stations, and hanging around the administrative people here. And I think they all admire Jeff and Jeff. They have an ease of relationship. They rely on each other. And it was just so easy. There's no tension. And I think you do a great job.
Appreciate that.
Thank you, both of you.
Yeah, I'll just add, I agree. I think you do a great job, and I guess I'm optimistic about the plans that we have moving forward, and I'm very much in the vein of when Lincoln ran against McClellan in 1864 and said, "Don't change horses in the middle of the stream. You're my horse," and I just think it's. I think that keeping that continuity is important, and you're an interesting type of. You have an interesting view towards government, because you know all the latest stuff, all the stuff that everybody that's chic for people to know, but you also understand that a lot of times that's not for Colerain, that we're more of a traditional community, and you understand how to keep kind of a finger in both of those pots and work towards a really positive future. And what the team has done with comprehensive plans and things like that, and policy books, which there might be disagreements over certain policies, but there were no policies. And it's just, I think that months and years from now, people are going to look at that and they're going to be like, oh my gosh, we're behind on the arc of things. That number was
I think there should be an effective date for that, and I would say April 1st.
Okay, and that would bring you up, I think, with Springfield Township, with Green. I don't sense you're kind of the person that's going to jump from place to place, and I want to reward you for staying here and being part of that future. So we have, what did you say, April 1st?
That would be, I would recommend it be effective April 1st.
All right, so now we have actually a amendment, a friendly amendment to that, and I'll second that. So we're voting on the amendment to make that effective April 1st, April 1st. Yeah.
Ms. Ulrich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes. Now we're voting on the pay, the new pay effective, pay based upon the amended date of April 1st.
Ms. Ulrich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes. All right, that is passed. Motion to authorize Township Administrator enter into an agreement for gas aggregation at or below the 56 per CCF per month for a period of 24 months. Mr. Mills, speak to that, and I don't know that Mr. Unger might have a, based upon what he said when they came in, he might have an amendment, so.
Sure. Yep. So based on our conversations, Mr. Weckbach has leads this effort. But based on our conversations, our vendor suggests that we enter into a contract for a period of 24 months at a rate not to exceed 56 cents per CCF of natural gas delivered. But as you saw, that wasn't the only option. There's a 12-month option, a 24-month option, a 36-month option.
I'll go ahead and motion to authorize the Township Administrator to enter into an agreement for gas aggregation at or below 56 cents per cubic foot, per 1,000 cubic feet is what that is.
Yes, sir.
For a period of 24 months, and I just hope that our national leadership gets in tune with what energy policy is.
I'll second.
All right, so I guess I'm a little confused that, should the price go down, do we lose leverage if the price should go down in 3 weeks or 3 months?
Yeah, so this will lock us in for 2 years. And the only way that we can change this price in the future is if we extend the term. So say we get 12 months out and all of a sudden...
During the negotiation period, I mean.
Oh, okay. Yeah, then we can, if it goes down before we sign a contract, then...
There's still room to move.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So there's...
At or below.
Yeah, at or below.
Right, I know, but at or below, but what is it? Okay, let's kind of sum it up into the...
It's like
what's to their benefit to be like, hey, I can get you lower?
Well, it really is just about the future of the commodity. So, commodity futures are traded, and so, whether it's corn or hogs or CCFs of natural gas, that market fluctuates, and it all depends on the timing of when you execute those contracts, those future contracts.
So I believe that right now we're at one of the highest levels ever.
And that's why you're seeing this 12-month at 61 cents.
Okay. So let's say a month from now it's lower. Would these numbers have been different? Because it says at or lower. That's the point that I guess I'm trying to wrap my mind around.
You're asking whether or not we should be timing the market a little bit differently.
Yes.
Yep. And so I don't have that specialized knowledge. That's why we rely on Mr. Surace to provide that. But if
But he's the one selling it to us.
well, he's the one buying the contracts on our behalf.
Okay.
And he would be doing that with that broader group of folks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, it's sort of a consortium, so we get bigger buying power.
It's a co-op essentially, yeah.
Yeah.
I got that. I just, the timing, I guess and again, I don't know. I mean, if I knew how to time commodities, I wouldn't be sitting here at 9 o'clock at night. Or 10 o'clock at night. I'd be, with that guy on a beach somewhere. But
It's a little over 16 cents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's my question, my concern about the timing, and the sticker shock from the last negotiation.
It's huge. It's huge. Yeah.
But citizens can just say, you know what, I can find it cheaper. I'm done.
Right.
Any other discussion?
And in fact, even on your utility bill, it says Duke Energy, who does the billing for this, it says right on there the rate to compare, and it's posted every month. So if you watch your utility bills at home and you see that different rate, that's it's right on there. They report it monthly what the Duke rate is versus the Constellation rate. So would this be with, I'm sure he mentioned that, is it with, he doesn't know. It might be with Constellation, it might be with somebody else. Okay.
Yeah, they would do the administration, right?
Yeah, well, it could be Constellation could deliver the gas, or it could be or it could be some, or provide the gas, or it could be another gas provider.
Okay.
Whoever has the best price.
All right. Any other comments?
None.
None.
Ms. Ulrich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes.
Thank you, Board. There is no old business this evening, and the rest of the items are in the consent agenda. Would you like me to read through those?
Yes, please.
Okay. First item is a donation acceptance. In the police department, it's a $900 donation from the Moose Lodge Number 2. They make this donation annually to the police department and also to the fire department. So there's a second donation acceptance to the fire department in the amount of $900 from Moose Lodge Number 2. There's a third donation acceptance to the fire department in the amount of $200. This is a donation from the family of Verlden Campbell in appreciation for emergency medical services that were rendered to Mr. Campbell. The next item is a new hire. It's the communications specialist. This position was posted, applications received, and interviews conducted. A conditional offer of employment was extended to Ms. Helen Tracy. The wage for this job is $31.25 per hour for 40 hours a week, contingent upon your approval. She'd be eligible to begin work tomorrow, but likely would not until, I believe her start date is 2 weeks.
March 23rd, it says on here.
Yep, there we go. And then finally, there is a contract on the agenda, in the consent agenda with Traffic Logics for the purchase of radar speed signs. Back in January of this year, the board approved the purchase of 3 radar speed signs. I have signed that contract and included here for transparency's sake. Recommendation is to approve all items on the consent agenda. Oh, and there's one more donation. It's in the public services, to the Public Services Department in the amount of $3,500. That donation is from the New Foundation Savings Bank, and they will serve as the title sponsor this year for our summer concerts and movies in the parks. Thank you to New Foundation Savings Bank. Recommendation is to approve.
A motion we approve consent items A through F is presented in the board packet.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Sure. On the, for transparency purposes, the traffic logic signs, it shows there's a mounting kit that is for the signs. 3 of them at $125 a piece, minus the discount, is $345. And then the signs themselves, which I have found to be incredibly useful for I don't know if anybody out there has seen the reports that those things produce, but they're really comprehensive over a 24-hour, 7-day period, and they just do a lot. The price for those is $8,119. And then, of course, this bill here says sales tax. Of course, we don't pay that, so there's no sales tax on that, but it does give an estimate for sales tax if some non-government agency was to buy these things. So I just wanted to read that into the record, and it's found in our agenda, so anybody can see it.
Yes, sir.
No other comments.
Thank you to the Moose Lodge and who did I miss? LaRosa's?
Kroger's.
Kroger.
And New Foundation.
New Foundation Savings and Loan. And I'm missing the individual here that yes, Mr. Campbell, thank you so much. That is appreciated.
And that the New Foundation Savings Bank, as was said, that is the title sponsor for our summer concert and movie series in the park. So thank you for stepping up and providing for that to New Foundation Savings Bank.
Seeing and hearing no other comment, Mr. Baker?
Ms. Ulrich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes.
Thank you, Board.
All right, moving on to item 13, Fiscal Office Report.
Thank you, Board. I'll be very brief. Just wanted to let everyone know that the the final completion of the 2021 financials are complete. We couldn't complete January until the software wouldn't allow us to do that until 21 was completely finished, which it is now. So we're working on on January of 22 now, and that should be up shortly. Secondly, just quickly, I've taken my daughters to Colerain Park a few times recently, and I think once we look at numbers for park usage, you're going to see a vast increase in Colerain because the new Megaland, the new park, is outstanding. My daughters love the zip line, so great job, and I know it's only going to get better. And then lastly, to respond to the mention of the public record request for the Rumpke contract, I think that I heard someone had mentioned that they requested it a couple different times and haven't received it, when in fact that was requested yesterday and fulfilled today. So it would be in their inbox. So that was a one-day turnaround time. The contract itself was signed on February 17th. So that's all I have.
Mr. Mills, Mr. Solomon, is there a need for an executive session?
Yes, sir. Recommend that the board go into executive session in accordance with the High Revised Code, Section 121.22G1, to discuss, nope, not that one. Sorry. 121.22G2, to consider the purchase of property for public purposes. Also in accordance with High Revised Code, Section 121.22G3, to discuss pending or imminent litigation with the township attorney. And then also in accordance with the High Revised Code 121.22G4, to discuss collective bargaining sessions. Okay. With public employees concerning their compensation. And also in accordance with High Revised Code Section 121.22G1, to discuss the employment and compensation of public employees.
Okay.
I motion that we go into executive session for those reasons.
I'll second.
All right, Mr. Baker.
Do you anticipate, I have
go
a
ahead.
comment, do you anticipate any action being taken on any of those?
I do not.
And everybody's welcome to stay, but I think when we come back, it'll likely be just to adjourn the meeting.
Ms. Ulrich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes.
And may I say before you hit the gavel, I'd like to invite Mr. Walls down to join us in addition to Mr. Weckbach.
Okay, we are adjourned to executive session with Chief Walls, Mr. Weckbach at 10:11. We will be back here shortly. All right, we're calling us back into session from executive session at 11:11 p.m., March 8th, 2022. Mr. Baker, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Ulrich?
Here.
Mr. Unger?
Here.
Mr. Waller?
Here. Mr. Mills, is there anything to report from executive session?
No, sir.
All right, so now we'll go into part 2 of the meeting. Are there any motions at this point?
I motion that we adjourn the meeting at 11:12 p.m. on March 8th.
I second it.
All right, we're not going to have any discussion. We're just going to vote.
Ms. Ulrich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes.